in the shadows of the darkness all around, waiting and watching, trying to take us down. Haters gonna hate no matter what you do, but we ain't looking back now that we've made it through. Rising up, no stopping us, we're on our way. Doesn't matter what they try to do or say, we're just getting stronger, can't touch us any longer. We're on our way, and tomorrow's always gonna be a brighter day.
Hey, good evening, jerks. Hello. Nice to see you, everybody. We are streaming on two different channels. My name is Mike Crawford. Some of you might be seeing me for the first time. We are also on Michael Carlin's channel tonight, and the Young Jerks, as usual. We've got a special guest. He's second time back on our program, The Young Jerks, tonight. I've been following him for decades, his books and his movies and his reporting and his YouTube channel. You should be following him too if you're not, especially if you're interested, like I am, in this Tupac trial that's happening starting tomorrow morning in Las Vegas. Dwayne Davis, Keefe D, is going to be on trial for the murder of Tupac. And this guest, Michael Carlin, like me, has quite a bit of history in the music industry, for one, and in journalism as well, especially. And in writing books, which I've never done. I've never written a book. I was a weekly columnist, but I've never written a book. But he's written several books, and one of the big books was Chaos Merchants. You should definitely check out that book. And it revealed a lot of the corruption, a lot of the police corruption in Compton, in Los Angeles, in L.A., related to the deaths of Biggie Smalls, Christopher Wallace, and Tupac Shakur. And a lot of it has come true. Like, a lot of his reporting has been since corroborated. And one of the big witnesses in this trial may be a guy that Michael has, dug up a lot of dirt on, the security chief, Reggie Wright Jr., a former police officer who was death row head of security when Tupac got murdered. And Michael's uncovered a lot of dirt related to these cops and kind of the Rampart cops, the David Macks of the world. There's a lot of corruption he's exposed. Some people are already calling him Reggie the Rat. You know who I'm talking about, Reggie the Rat. We may play a clip from Del Rey. Del Rey calls him Reggie the Rat. But there's a lot of YouTubers covering this. And Michael was like the first one. Michael was the first one to really cover Reggie the Rat. And a lot of other channels since then have kind of blown up, and they're on it. And this is going to be interesting to see what happens, because I think this is like a limited hangout. I really do, with what's going on with Dwayne Keefe D. Davis. I think it's much bigger than that, and I think Michael Carlin was onto this the whole time. And even when it got a little, because when everyone was pointing out, the cop there, I forget his name, Greg Kading, when everyone started talking about Greg Kading and his theories and how it was Keefe D, it looked like, oh, maybe Michael got it wrong. But no, Michael didn't get it wrong. Michael's been on the mark, and I think we may see some of this in the trial. We'll see. Maybe I'm going to get let down, but there's much more to this whole Tupac thing than just Keith Dwayne Davis, Keefe D. But what we're going to do, before we bring up Michael's backstage, I just want to play this little clip from, it's kind of a trailer from the last movie that came out, The Battle of Compton. And it kind of gives you an idea, and you're going to hear Michael's voice in it. This is just the end of the trailer. This was the extended trailer for that movie that came out, I think it was 2016. It's been quite a few, over a decade ago. That's how long Michael's been on this, for several decades, actually. But let's just play this clip, give you an idea of some of the discussion we're going to have tonight about what's going on with this Tupac trial starting tomorrow. Oh, sorry. I thought I had it up. Hold on one second.
So lines that people with power are unwilling to cross to defend their power. No legal lines, no moral lines, no ethical lines.
I mean, he was ready to make arrests. I mean, he was all the way in on it. He was ready to file, but his superiors, basically blocked him and eventually took him off.
He's dead. That person's dead. And everybody feels comfortable with the fact.
If something is worth $500 million and you're tired of being harassed by the guy who runs it, why not just kill him and take it from him?
And when I say everybody, I mean whoever set it up.
Guns, drugs, jealousy, money. This is a really bad formula here.
They're not going to rest until Suge Knight is dead or in jail.
It was a setup.
You should check that movie out if you haven't seen it yet. Tupac Assassination: A Battle for Compton. Let's bring up the guest of the night. I'm really happy to have him back on the show. Again, we're streaming on his channel. We have it pinned in our YouTube chat for the Young Jerk, so definitely make sure you subscribe, sub up to Michael Carlin. Let's bring up Michael tonight. Welcome back to the Young Jerks. How you doing today, Michael Carlin?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here.
You must be very excited in a way for this trial to kick off, because you've been waiting for some justice for Tupac for a long time, and this, I don't know if we're going to get justice from this, but this is something happening tomorrow.
Well, it's definitely going to be a spectacle. I mean, there's no question about it. I'm not sure we're going to get justice for Tupac, but we're just beginning to learn about this case. And there's supposedly 13,000 documents that have been entered into evidence by the defense. Now, I'm not sure what those are, but, it's got to be something, got to be kind of interesting. And it seems like everything is corroborating what Russell Poole believed at the end of his life. And we're coming up Wednesday on the anniversary of the death of Russell Poole. And, it's 11 years now. And how much have we learned in 11 years? But yet, at the end of Russell's life, he knew what had happened. And everybody thought we were batshit crazy 11 years ago. And now, doesn't look like it.
Even like a year or two ago, people were kind of crapping on all of it, and now it seems like just on the eve of this trial, people are kind of waking up, and there's a lot of scrutiny on Reggie Wright Jr. right now. It seems like to me on YouTube, especially.
Well, and rightfully so. And even KVD has come out and said Reggie Wright Jr. was behind both of the murders. And Reggie Wright Jr. was an official suspect in the Biggie murder back in the day. But there was a confession letter that Chris Blatchford got in 1998. And Las Vegas had no interest. LAPD had no interest. So he just puts that into a file folder, and it sits there until Russell Poole comes along in 2013. And then it comes out, and that confession letter and Chris Blatchford's statement said that Reggie Wright Jr. was the orchestrator of the hit. And so now you have a suspect in the murder of the Tupac assassination, because it's not really just a murder. This was not a gangbanger thing, but you have a suspect who is the one that provides the predicate for Keefe D to get charged in this murder. He is the one that goes there and testifies to the grand jury in order to get Keefe D indicted. So how does a suspect become the predicate of a murder case?
It reminds a lot of people of what we were covering in the Karen Reed trial. A lot of people think the suspects were the murderers, and they also had police connections. And it's interesting how history kind of repeats itself for a lot of us watching. Tell us about Russell Poole, because some people watching, obviously, on your channel, they know who Russell Poole is. I know who Russell Poole is, but there are a lot of people watching for the first time, just catching on. Tell us who Russell Poole was and how you got to work with Russell Poole, and maybe give us a little background on that, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Russell Poole was an LAPD cop for 18 years and 7 months, something like that. And 13 of those years, he was an LAPD detective. And he worked on over 500 homicides. 300 of those he worked on as the lead. He testified in over 100 murder trials. He got over 22 commendations. He solved the Ennis Cosby murder, and he was named to be the first lead detective on the Biggie Smalls murder. And all of his leads kept bringing him back to the Tupac murder as well. And he kept going to upper police management saying, hey, we need to investigate this and we need to investigate. And they kept saying, no, shut down your investigation. And he said, look, my whole career, all I've ever done was just follow the truth wherever that led. And it's leading to LAPD cops. And Police Chief Bernard Parks, what Russell didn't know at the time, was it's leading to the corrupt cops that were handpicked by Police Chief Bernard Parks. It's leading to internal affairs. And I don't know how much you know about the Robert Kennedy assassination, but Bobby Kennedy Jr. just came out recently and said, hey, the whole thing was covered up by LAPD. And that corroborates this documentary that just came out about Dare and about Daryl Gates, who was the one who really started the whole Dare program nationwide. I mean, it all starts in LA. And that makes sense too, because there's a media element, and the media and LAPD are really kind of hand in hand. And that was the environment that Russell Poole found himself working in. And when his entire career, he had been able to take these investigations wherever they led, all of a sudden he's going into Police Chief Bernard Parks kind of area, and Bernard Parks is shutting him down right and left. And he ended up tendering his resignation over that. And then we learned later that when Compton was trying to shut down the corrupt Compton police, and that includes Reggie Jr. and Reggie Sr., that Bernard Parks had flown to D.C. to meet with a Compton official to say, please, please don't shut down Compton. We work hand in hand with those guys. And so, the Rampart Scandal Police that Bernard Parks handpicked and the Compton PD were all working hand in hand together for years. And there's a lot that I can talk about. I mean, Compton has 2 cemeteries there, and the bodies were starting to be dug up, and new bodies were kind of strewn in with the old bodies, and bodies are being dropped off in the cemetery to control the investigation. And the homicide investigator was Reggie Wright Sr. And at the time that Compton PD gets shut down, there were 275 open murder cases. 24 of the files get turned over to the sheriffs. 251 murder files are purged. They did not want to hand those murder documents over to the sheriffs. Now you have to ask yourself why. Well, the murder rates plummet because once the sheriffs take over, you no longer have the cops doing the killing. And that's what it looks like. It looks like the cops were part of doing the killing. And one of those murders that happens, in the aftermath of Tupac is Bobby Finch. And they say it's a gang thing. Well, is it a gang thing really when 13 of the bullets go through the car and 11 of them hit Bobby Finch's body? Does that sound like gangbanger stuff to you? Yeah. So I thought today we talked first briefly about KVD. I think KVD is his own worst enemy, and he has definitely not done himself any favors in this case. But when you look at the book that he allegedly wrote, he doesn't even know what's in the book. He has absolutely no idea what's in his book. And, for some reason, I cannot hear you. I wonder, is that me or is that you?
Sorry, I was muted.
Oh,
I do that sometimes. That's
there
so
you go.
funny. I got this nice microphone that I'm gonna hook up again. I got the equipment now, and there's no mute button. So that
Oh, there you
my
go.
my moms make fun of me every show because I do that. And that time I didn't think I was muted, but I was. All right, sorry.
Wow. Well,
I forgot what I was saying. Go ahead, Michael.
well. Anyway, the Keefe D thing. He's going to have problems with his case. There's no doubt about it. And the very first day of the trial, he waived his right to have the jury decide a sentence, which I think is problematic. But no matter what, if there's a sentence, whether it's imposed by the jury or whether it's imposed by the judge, I think he's gone for the rest of his life. And so this has to be, like a high stakes thing now. And unless there's something that that the defense is able to pull out of a hat, I think, are going to see a conviction in this case, even though there's not one shred of physical evidence that Keefe was even in Las Vegas. There's no DNA. There's no gun. There's no cars. There's no eyewitnesses. There's nothing. There's a book that Keefe was coerced into confessing by Greg Kading. And then you have the actual proffer deal. And what's interesting about the proffer deal, and I'm going to show this to you, and then I'm going to read it to you. I don't know if you can see it, but this is a page out of a book called Once Upon a Time in Compton. And I'm not sure anybody's caught this yet, but I'm going to read it to you because this book, I believe, was orchestrated by Greg Kading. And I'll
because some people don't know who Greg Kading is. Tell people who Greg Kading
is the perpetrator of the cover-up, in my opinion.
And he's an ex-cop with a troubled past.
Yeah, with a troubled past.
Who lied on the stand.
Oh yeah. Oh. I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff. And so to rehabilitate his reputation, he teamed up with a guy named Michael Burko, and they concocted how they were going to derail the Biggie Smalls case. And there's 3 books that derailed that case. One of them is Murder Rap, and that became a documentary, and then it became the television series Unsolved, which with Josh Duhamel, which I got a story about Josh too. But anyway, and then there's a book called Once Upon a Time in Compton, and that's written by Tim Brennan and Bobby Ladd. And Tim Brennan is the one that wrote the original affidavit, which was the search warrant, which all of this is based upon. And then you have the third book, which is Keefe D's book, and that is, hold on, I got it right here for anybody who wants to see it. Sorry for the shakiness. That is called Compton Street Legend. And when you read this book, it's written in the King's English. And when you listen to Keefe D, it's like this book doesn't even resemble how Keefe D talks. And he's given several interviews which have said, hey, I didn't write that book, but I'm going to show you something that's kind of interesting. You ever seen a hood book that has an index?
No.
Well, wait a minute. A hood book has an index. Why? Because it's written like a deposition, because they knew they were going to try and get it entered into the court. And Reggie just came out recently.
That book was kind of a setup.
A complete setup.
The book was a setup to get Keefe to basically admit to it.
And Reggie is so dumb. Reggie is like the dumbest. He's like dumb as a brick, because he comes out and says, well, the only reason that Keefe got hemmed up in this is because Mike Dorsey, the director of Murder Rap, started a petition. And that's how he got hemmed up in this thing. Did I lose you?
No, I'm still there.
Okay. Anyway,
you're my nose.
Okay. He said, Mike Dorsey started a petition and he submitted it to Las Vegas, and that's how he got hemmed up in this case to begin with. And so it's like these same players are constantly trying to get these guys all hemmed up in this stuff so that they can sell this narrative that Orlando Anderson was the shooter. So I'm going to read you something that I don't think anybody else has found, but I think it's interesting because it really does give Keefe D a shot at immunity. And this is in the book Once Upon a Time in Compton. And you can look it up in the book. I'm going to read it to you. Over the next 5 years, nothing much happened with the task force. The team couldn't agree on a direction. After 5 years of not solving the 45 cases that directly and indirectly connected to the Biggie murder case, Detective Greg Kading ended up as the last lead detective on the task force. He offered Keefe D immunity on a Las Vegas case, getting him to say that he and the Southside Crips were not involved in Biggie's murder, but that he, Terrence Brown, DeAndre Smith, and Orlando Anderson were involved in the murder of Tupac. So if this book corroborates that Keefe D felt he had immunity from the Las Vegas case, and this book is written by two prominent Compton cops, then I think he's got a defense that he had immunity in Vegas. And this may be a find, and he may actually have immunity in Vegas. I'm going to read you something else, and this is from 2012. This is June 14th of 2012. Okay, and it's from a chat board that Greg was active on chat boards. And one of the things that I decided early on in this case is I don't play small ball. So you never see me in comments on other people's videos and what have you. But Greg Kading has always done that.
my
He
God.
loves to play
Yeah.
small ball.
He's always there. I mean, I've had
always there.
interactions with him on YouTube channels, like
It's
just
like-
in the comments. Like he's just
Yeah.
a clown.
Well, or he's being paid. And
Yeah, that's
he
true.
definitely
Propaganda
got paid.
campaign.
That's it. It's a propaganda campaign out of LAPD, in my opinion. So this is a question. What are the odds Detective Tim Brennan would make an account on here, Greg Kading, because two people with inside information are better than one? So that's a legitimate question by Drake, June 14th, 2012 at 12:19 p.m. Well, he basically says he's not going to come on the channel, but he says, I am planning on sitting down with him for our documentary and a second book. So is Once Upon a Time in Compton Greg Kading's second book? And if this ends up being Greg Kading's second book and he had something to do with the writing, and he's saying that Keefe D had immunity, then you know what? I think Keefe D has a shot at actually putting that into the record and saying, hey, I have immunity. And here's the interesting thing. When you go on Amazon and you pull up any one of these books, all three of them pop up, and it's frequently sold together, these three books. And so I just thought I'd show you that because to me, that is the narrative. That is the cover up. And before we dive knee deep into the cover up, why don't we start with the beginnings of how did this all happen?
Yeah, I like that. Let's get into that. But before we do that, I want because this is the thing with YouTube, which is funny because there's more than half the audience knows every detail of this. They know more than I do. They know as much as you do, Michael. But there are some people that have no clue. They're the first timers here. And so I guess what I want before we get into the history, the chronology, what is your overall theory? Because I know it, but I want you to kind of explain it on why this happened. Why was Tupac and Suge targeted that night? Why did that happen? What's your? Because I think you do have, and I think you're right on what you think. And you kind of said it in the intro when we were playing that clip from the movie about the money. Like, what was the motive? Why did they do this, do you think?
Well, here's the thing. Nobody really cares what Michael Carlin thinks about these murders. But what they do care about is what Russell Poole, a decorated and storied homicide investigator, and Greg Kading's a drug guy. He's not a homicide investigator. He's investigated a total of 2 murders, and that's Tupac and Biggie. And most of that was with just, kind of dug up, BS that he put out to lead everything away from the LAPD. And so the theory really goes that you have corrupt cops that were inside the record label. I'm going to get into the beginnings of how they got there, but they were sitting there as thieves looking around, and they saw Death Row Records, and they said, you know what, we could take this down. And they tried to topple the record label with the help of Reggie Wright Jr., with probably the help of his father. I mean, clearly that's becoming more and more evident. And, so that is the theory. And so it's the theory that they tried to topple the record label. And when they actually had kind of gotten away with the murder of Tupac, but they hadn't killed Suge Knight. They put Suge Knight in prison, and then they had to draw attention away from themselves. So they killed Biggie Smalls at the Peterson Automotive Museum and made it the big East Coast, West Coast war. And they
Biggie was Biggie was like a cover up. It was basically to kind of change the change the narrative. Yeah.
I believe so.
And so when you said that the cops were inside the label and they wanted to take it over, it was for the money, right? For the catalog. They wanted.
Yeah, I mean, that was big money. But you know what? Yeah. I also think that
because Reggie actually took over. Reggie Wright took over the label when Suge went to jail, didn't he?
And look, I've seen it over and over in business when somebody sees a company and they think it's so easy that they can go run it, they can do what Suge Knight does, or they can do whatever the CEO does, and then they take over the company and they can't do what he does. And Reggie was just one of those kind of people who thought he could do what Suge Knight did. And how many hits did Death Row Records have under Reggie's leadership? I mean,
none.
It's not so easy. Yeah. Suge Knight had a talent. I mean, I told him that on the phone when I talked to him. I said, hey, man, I had a lot of respect for you because I was doing the research for Tupac 187. And I just came to respect what you were able to accomplish, the music you were able to give us. And who else could have done that? I mean, he made it look so easy, but it wasn't so easy. But at the time, Death Row Records was worth $500 million. That's a lot of pork chops.
Yeah, and a lot of revenue coming in. I mean, even now, those Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, and Tupac songs are still played on the radio, on TV, and movies. They're still getting money for those songs.
Make no mistake about it. Suge Knight, even though he's had, a lot of his publishing revenue stolen from him, he still gets checks. And he's not exactly a big spender right now. So, that money's piling up. I think Suge Knight's got some money. And, the music industry is lucrative. And Death Row Records was extremely lucrative. But we'll start the story back.
Yeah. Before we go there, because this part was about the money, which is very topical right now, because you have one of the guys who was the producer. Like, everyone thinks Dr. Dre recorded all the music, but there's another guy named Daz Dillinger who apparently recorded a lot of the hits. He was the producer, and he didn't get credit. He basically, there was a forgery around his rights. They said he gave his rights away, but he never signed the paperwork. It seems like Reggie and the record label tried to steal his rights to the music he created, Daz Dillinger. And you've been talking about this for decades, that this was a takeover. This was a business takeover. They were trying to take over the royalties. And I even think it goes, above Reggie. I look at the real owners of Death Row, Ted Field, and the other guy, Jim, these other folks that are the record label guys. Yeah. You wonder if they're not in on it, if they're not some type of CIA too, But like, the whole thing, has been about the money. You've been saying that for decades. And now you got Daz Dillinger in a public feud with Snoop Dogg and the real owners of the, of the recordings, and saying, he's suing them now. Like, he just did an interview, I think, with Del Rey and some of the other YouTubers out there. And he's talking about it, that they owe him money, that he got ripped off. And it is about the money. They even stole Daz's money. Never mind what they stole from Tupac. Never mind what they stole from all the other artists. And Suge himself but now Daz Dillinger is actually suing too. So you've been, like I said, you've been proven right.
Yeah.
You were the guy that started all this like 20 years ago, and everything, even like this week, stuff is coming out that I'm saying, you know what, Michael was so on the mark. What do you want to say about all that, Daz Dillinger and his fight with Snoop Dogg and the real owners of the label?
I mean, it goes back to Ice Ice Baby, right? I mean, it goes back to, people don't get paid for what they do in the record industry. And if they can, they're going to steal it from you. And it's not unlike any other industry. If they think they can steal your invention, they're going to come in and they're going to try and steal your invention. So, this is just normal business, and it's a lot easier to go steal something than it is to go create it, and like creating music is very difficult. And when you hear those songs that you wouldn't want to change a note on and they become hits and what have you, you listen to them and you're like, man, isn't that something? And it's just not so easy to create. And that becomes super valuable. And unfortunately, if your last name is Houston, and you happen to be related to Whitney, you may not own much of her music, because that's just how this stuff works. If your last name's Jackson, you probably still don't own the Beatles catalog, right? And so, we could just go on and on and on. Prince, we talked about him earlier. We supplied the equipment on his studio in Paisley Park in Minneapolis. And Prince, who owns his catalog? I mean, I don't know the answer, but it's probably not anybody related to Prince. And even
He was a guy. He was a
Yeah.
guy that really fought the industry on that
Oh
stuff
yeah,
too, like ownership. And
oh, he became the artist formerly known as Prince because
yeah,
he was in a big contract dispute. And so, this whole thing in the music industry, and it's a end-to-end business. So there's CIA ties into it, there's mob ties into it. And if you listen to some of the stuff that I've recently done, at the end, it's like those guys, Tupac and Suge, were talking about creating their own record label,
they were.
and they were going to distribute their own stuff, and they were going to call it Lucky Seven. And wow, that was right at the end when Tupac and Suge get targeted. What are the odds that they would be targeted after that, right? I mean, and
And
so,
there's rumors that there were other record labels involved in that, like Pimp C
oh
and
yeah,
like every single label that was rumored to be working
all,
on that, they all
they,
went
s-
down. They
yeah,
all went
Tupac
down.
said all the artists are going to come with us. Well,
Yeah.
anybody that was going to come with them, probably was on a list, and that was probably a list you didn't want to be on. And so, the whole industry is tainted that way. It's it's one of those industries where it's controlled stem to stern. It's controlled globally, and you don't want to have a music catalog that where you're worth more dead than you are alive, because the life expectancy on an artist that's in that situation usually isn't too long. And a lot of the artists that have lived a long time have sold off their catalogs, because they probably got advised, hey, it's probably a good idea if you just sell this. And they seem to live longer if that's the case, right? And we talked about it earlier. You got Miles Copeland, who founds the CIA. He has three sons. Who are those three sons? Well, it's Miles Copeland Jr., IRS records. It's Stuart Copeland, the police. It's Ian Copeland, FBI booking. You have Jim Morrison, whose father was Admiral Morrison, that was the admiral in charge of the Navy at the time of the Gulf of Tonkin incident. I mean, so you don't have to look too far for ties to U.S. intelligence with the music industry, or you don't have to look too far with ties to the intelligence with movies too. You have Arnon Milchan, who actually was in Century City. And who was he? Well, he was the guy who gave Israel the nuclear bomb. And he, produced some of the greatest films of all time after that, and nothing ever happened to him. We exfiltrated all the secrets to our nuclear arsenal and to Israel, and nothing happened. Nothing happened to him. And, that's well documented. And so, the movie industry and the music industry are both very steeped in the intelligence community. And
I always see very common things in the music industry, in the Hollywood entertainment system. Either, like you said, either like CIA, spycraft, mafia is another one.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times cults too, which they all go hand in hand if you look at it. The cults, the mafia,
I
and the
mean,
intelligence agencies, they all work together. It's
yeah.
it's wild because there's so much connections there, whether it's Scientology or uh, the CIA or, like I said, the mafia. Like they have always all worked together. I'm convinced of it, and they work hand in hand. And I think it's all tools for that. You know, CIA and LAPD has always been tied into all of them, like the mafia, the Scientology, and especially the CIA. Like LAPD, it's notorious for all of that. It's just so documented. And the money, like you said, that the fight for the money, you're more valuable dead than alive. That is the music industry. That is the music industry. Michael Jackson made them a lot more money as soon as he died. As soon as
Yeah.
he died,
Oh,
they
yeah.
got the insurance payoff for the tour that didn't happen, and then they got all the streaming and the CDs, and everyone went back and bought the music again. That's the bump. They always get more for when you're dead than alive, and I think that's a lot of times why the producers encourage the risky behavior. They sign people who are into the gunplay and the gun culture, the gang culture, and the drugs, and they push the drugs. And I think that's a lot of the reason, because when your artist dies, you don't lose your investment. You get an insurance payoff, and then you get a bump from the royalties when the records start selling again. You know.
Yeah. Well, Jimmy told Suge, "Hey, you just hit the lottery," and he's like, "What do you mean? My friend died." He goes, "No, no, no, man. Dead artist revenues. You're gonna make millions and millions." And Suge wasn't really like about the money. I mean,
Really?
Suge had money, but he was more about his dead friend than he was anything. And he didn't appreciate Jimmy saying that to him, but that's the way it is. You hit the jackpot when your artist dies.
And less people to pay. Then you don't even have to pay the artist. Maybe the family might sue you, like Afeni Shakur did, But it's funny because Afeni, when she sued Suge too at first, but she didn't get any money from Suge. She got the money from
Interscope.
you know who,
Yeah.
the guys up top, Ted Field and Jimmy, Interscope
Well,
Records. That's who actually paid off Afeni, right?
yeah. Well, if you talk about Ted Field, I went to a gallery and they had, it was a showing that was opening, and I showed up there and a guy sat down behind me, and I heard later that he found out I was going to be there and he wanted to meet me, so he sat right behind me, and I got up and I turned around, when the opening was over, and now it was a cocktail party. And he said, "Oh, I want to meet you. I want to meet you." And I turned around, it was Ted Field. And Ted Field said, "Hey, are you Michael Carlin?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm Michael Carlin." He said, "Oh, I want to hear about Tupac." And I was like, "Okay." I said, "Well, Ted, actually, we have another connection." I said, "You tried to buy my father's company." And, we talked about it. And he said, "Oh, yeah, yeah, I remember that whole thing. Yeah, I remember. Hey, I want to talk to you about Tupac." And, Ted at the time was like 78 years old or something. He had his 26-year-old girlfriend with him. And she was kind of funny, actually. And he said, "Hey, was it Orlando Anderson? Was it Orlando?" And I said, "Ted, that's not true. Come on, Ted." And he goes, "Well, was it the East Coast, West Coast thing?" And I said, "Ted, it's not true." And he goes, well, nobody knows what happened." And his girlfriend goes, "Well, I think Mike here seems to think he knows what happened." And I said, "Of course I know what happened." I said, "It was those corrupt cops. They were all in on it." And he couldn't bear what I was saying, and he stormed off. And the gallery owner is a friend of mine, and I went and talked to him, and I said, "Hey, man, who invited Ted?" And he goes, "Oh, it's this dude Craig that wanted to meet you too." And I had met Craig earlier, and he said he heard that that you were going to be here, and that's why Ted came. I said, okay, well, that seems weird. I said, you know what? I got kind of a little bit of a crazy feeling about that. He said, if I were you, I would purpose to never meet Ted Field again. I don't think that's a good thing for you. I said, okay, I don't need to be warned twice. And
Yeah,
then,
do you think that, like, do you think he was trolling you, and do you think he was kind of trying to give you a, like, kind of freak you out a little bit?
yeah, but I'm not freaked out. I mean,
Yeah. Do you think
they
he was
see it.
trying though?
I mocked him. I mean, I made
Yeah.
fun of him. I
Yeah,
was
you
like,
did.
come on, man, you know that's not true. And his girlfriend was mocking him too. She was like, hey, Mike really seems to know. And he just couldn't bear the conversation. He literally like ran out of the gallery. It was really something. But then I also got
That's
tapped on the
amazing.
shoulder. I also got tapped on the shoulder by Rafael Perez's daughter.
Wow. So tell
And
people. All right. So number one, for people that don't know, Ted Field is the owner of Interscope Records, one of the
yeah.
biggest label owners, probably CIA, big family money, old
Oh, yeah.
money.
Yeah. It's
And
Marshall
Raphael,
Fields. It's the
yeah,
Marshall Fields
the
fortune.
Field stores, yeah, right.
Yeah.
But Rafael Perez, for people that don't know, do you know the movie, the Training Day? Basically, the character Denzel played was based on Rafael Perez. And if you
Yeah.
also look at that TV show, The Shield, it's kind of based on that crew of bad police officers. Rafael Perez, that's who Rafael Perez was. He's Denzel in Training Day, basically.
Yeah.
But he and David Mack is another cop that had a lot of issues and got caught doing the armed robbery. Rafael Perez was part of this crew with Reggie Wright Jr., but Reggie denied it. But it seems pretty obvious that Rafael was part of the crew with Reggie. So tell us, you met Rafael Perez's daughter,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Rafael Perez also has a connection to Weinstein, I believe, in Hollywood
Yeah.
too, right?
Yeah. He was the driver for Harvey Weinstein. But
Wow.
you know what's
See, again,
interesting?
the cops and the military and the Hollywood—they're all tied in. It's unbelievable.
Well, and when we look at Keefe book about Rafael Perez, David Mack, Kevin Gaines, he tries to paint it as those are Suge's friends. Those aren't Reggie's friends. So we're trying to take away all of the emphasis on Reggie. We're trying to, those guys were just rogue cops. They weren't any part of LAPD. They never talk about how those guys were all handpicked by Bernard Parks. That never gets mentioned. They never talk about how Russell Poole was ordered to stand down as he was investigating those guys. Because don't forget, Russell also investigated the Gaines-Liga shooting. And Russell, before he died, told me, he said, I would have never cleared Frank Liga had I known that he actually knew who he was shooting. He shot Kevin Gaines, and he knew him from before. They had met previously. He said, I would have never cleared that shooting had I known that. So anyway, there are a group of corrupt cops. It's called the Rampart scandal. It ends up with the federal government doing a consent decree and taking over LAPD. And they bring your guy, Bill Bratton from Boston, in to run LAPD because the scandal was so bad. And the Compton PD is tied in with the Rampart scandal cops. And so they operate kind of as one and the same entity. And if you got a murder that you want to perpetrate in the city of Los Angeles, all you got to do is just dump the body in Compton, where it's going to be handled by the Compton PD, because wherever the body is found, that's where the investigation happens, or doesn't happen, as it were, right? And so this group of cops is running roughshod throughout Los Angeles. They're doing home invasion robberies. They're doing murder for hire stuff. It's the Rampart scandal. Now, they only actually get busted. Rafael Perez gets busted for stealing cocaine out of the evidence locker. But Rafael Perez is such a great liar that he actually gets a hung jury in his case. And they wanted to retry him, but they were afraid to retry him. So they give him a plea deal. And he doesn't do very much time at all. And then you have David Mack, who actually goes into a Bank of America and is able to get away with $722,000 in a heist. And his girlfriend was the manager at the bank who ordered up that cash, which was an anomaly. And so they get caught, and David Mack goes down for the bank robbery.
So this is a
Kevin,
cop that did a bank robbery.
yeah, he goes in broad
Imagine that,
daylight.
people.
Yeah, goes in, with guns. But he had two accomplices. Never had to give up his accomplices. He got away with $722,000. Never had to give up the money. He gets sentenced and off he goes and does his time. And when he gets out, he's got a nice, group, a little bit of money that he can, come out to, because he didn't have to give up the money.
Yeah, and David Mack too. Like, this is important because you mentioned Bernard Parks. Bernard Parks was big time. He was the head of L.A. police, right? Basically, or one of the top.
He was the head of LAPD.
Okay, he was the head of LAPD, and David Mack was a great athlete. He was like, possibly like an Olympic level track guy, and it was like a big time name in Los Angeles because of his athletic prowess, because of his track and field. He was an athlete, and that's one of the reasons Bernard Parks really liked David Mack, right?
Absolutely. And you know what? The dossier was able to get an interview with him, and I thought it was really interesting because what he said, I just found fascinating. He said, look, I don't know why everybody focuses on Rampart. This stuff was happening throughout all of the precincts in Los Angeles. It wasn't just the Rampart precinct. He said, this is what's going on in policing in Los Angeles. And he basically said, that this stuff is going on all over the place. And I thought that was really a great interview because it gives us a perspective on this. But how do these cops actually get into death row records? I mean, I think that's kind of.
Keep interrupting you before we get there.
No.
I want to underline that point. That was such a good point you made.
Yeah.
Like, that the LA Police Department was basically run like a drug organization where people would rob drug dealers and kick up the money to the superiors. There was a lot of that. Like, when you see Training Day, that's the way it was. It really was that way. And David Mack is telling you that. And he's the guy who did the armed robbery of a bank while he was a police officer. And this stuff is just so fascinating to me because I don't think people realize it. And then you look at, like you said, we're going to get into the history of death row records and how these cops got involved. But you also have, we were talking about this backstage, you got this big time, the biggest cocaine dealer in the country basically was a guy named Ricky Ross, and he was funded by the Iran-Contra people, the Nicaraguans, the right-wing plot to fund the CIA, their war south of the border.
Yeah.
And this is all in L.A. And Ricky Ross was tied to the guy who sued Suge Knight. Suge Knight was the owner of Death Row Records. They say who funded him was this Michael Moore guy. He was partners with Ricky Ross. I mean, just all of it. If you look at the whole picture, it's like, what was really going on here? You got the CIA, you got international drug dealing, you have the cops, the LA police are basically run like a criminal organization. And then you have Death Row Records over here, and you have Hollywood, and it's all, they all want a piece of the pie, It's like just this never-ending corruption, gang, government. It's just unbelievable what was going on. I want people to really have a feeling of what this is about.
Well, LAPD was involved in the murder of RFK, and RFK Jr. has recently come out and talked about that. And so when you think about it, here is a prominent Democrat, probably going to get the nomination, probably going to win for president. They had assassinated his brother in '63, and now they assassinated him at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. And there was more than one gun. I got to interview Juan Romero, who was the guy who was actually holding the rosary and had that exchange with RFK when he was passing away, and was able to present him the rosary. And so, he told me that there was more than one gun. He was convinced of it. He said, but I don't say it too loud, and he didn't want to say it publicly. and he's now dead. What a shock, right? And anyway, so LAPD covered up that murder and they toppled a presidency. So, we're seeing things, history just keeps repeating. I mean,
Right.
Abraham Lincoln was murdered. There were, presidents are likely to get murdered. It's just there's so much money, so much power. And so when you look at like Freeway, Ricky Ross and Pat Johnson and Michael Harris, Harry O, those guys all funded. And Keefe D says he was part of the money that was put up for Death Row 2. And those guys were doing business with Daniel Blandon. And Daniel Blandon was a Nicaraguan, and he had CIA cover to bring drugs into the United States, Air America, all that stuff. And they were flying Con Air, they were flying in drugs, and they were dropping them off. And then there was 6 police helicopters in Compton. Now, why does a city of like 10 square miles need
10
6
miles?
police helicopters? Well, one of those helicopters crashed, and it crashed at the school warehouse, the Compton Unified School District warehouse. And the mayor showed up. They told him he couldn't come into the debris field. Nobody was going to tell this mayor he couldn't come in. He pushed his way through. And what does he see on the debris field? Kilos of cocaine. Kilos of cocaine. And so the Compton police helicopters were doing the actual deliveries. Those were delivery vehicles for the cocaine. You can't make this stuff up. And there's an airstrip that flies into the Compton, in that Compton airstrip, there is a plane that flies in at 6 a.m. every morning. They try and get it shut down because, the residents don't like to be woken up at 6 a.m. And all of a sudden, people in suits are showing up everywhere, threatening people, saying, no, that plane is going to fly in at 6 a.m. and there's nothing you can do about it. And so that's what's bringing the cocaine in. And now you have Death Row Records that's flying artists all over the country, and there's police that are on those planes. And whenever anybody wants to board those planes and search, all they do is they pull up their badge and their gun and they flash it and they say, oh, no, this is official police business, even though it's not official police business. And so they're transporting the drugs all throughout the country. Now, I don't know what anybody that was inside Death Row Records knew about that stuff. That stuff was probably all done fairly quietly. Nobody knew what the cargo was in those planes, but probably those cops. But, this is kind of the industry we find ourselves in. And in the 80s and 90s, there was more cocaine just swimming around the industry. I can't even tell you the number of times I was offered cocaine when I was working in the industry back in the 80s and the 90s. I mean, it was everywhere. It was pervasive. And so
CIA was bringing it in.
the CIA was bringing it in. They cooked up crack cocaine in a laboratory. I mean, nobody that was from the inner city learned how to cook crack cocaine. That was done in a laboratory, and then they came out and they taught people how to do it. And they taught people, and then you had the DARE program that starts up, because DARE has to do one important thing, and that was create the demand for the crack cocaine. And so we're going to create curiosity in every classroom, and people are going to start to try drugs, and then we're going to roll that out nationwide. And that's where we're going to get the money to fund our covert activities. And this is the setting in which Death Row Records gets started in 92. Actually, 91, I think, was when they really started, because they were getting advances from record labels. So they had the money to do all the music stuff. The $1.5 million that they get from the street, and the John Payne brings in a grocery sack full of $1.5 million that came from the drug dealers, and that starts probably the dark side of Death Row. It probably wasn't even the light side, the music side of Death Row. But you have an artist who gets into trouble, and it's called Woodbine Park. I used to live right across the street from Woodbine Park. This is how, our lives intersect with these things. And Snoop Doggy Dogg is early in his career. He pulls out a gun, and his bodyguard Malik has a gun, and they shoot Philip Waldemariam. And Philip Waldemariam is shot in the back, and he runs off and dies in the alley behind Woodbine Park. And the first call gets made to Suge Knight, and Suge Knight says, okay, hold on, I'm going to call David Kenner. They put him at the Peninsula Hotel under pseudonyms. They pick up the car. The cleaner comes and picks up the car. The guns go missing. There's no physical evidence that's ever found in that car because it gets completely sanitized. Because, you call David Kenner, a criminal defense attorney. He knows what to do. Guns never show back up, but they have a big problem with the case. There's 2 eyewitnesses that saw a gun in Snoop's hand. And there's also shell casings and bloody clothing of Philip Waldemariam. And that gets entered into evidence and booked at Pacific Division of the LAPD. And so now if this goes to trial, they're going to have a problem with this evidence because the evidence is going to show that there's 2 guns because you have shell casings of a 40 and a 38. And the bloody clothing is going to be a problem because it's showing that Philip Waldemariam was not shot when he was threatening. He was shot when he was running away from them. So now they have to put together a plan. What's the plan that they're going to put together? They're going to go in to the evidence locker at the Pacific Division, and they're going to steal the evidence. So they contract with these dirty cops, and they bring them into the record label. And they're also going to go and they're going to intimidate the witnesses. So you have Compton PD showing up to intimidate the witnesses. You have LAPD showing up to intimidate the witnesses. And all of a sudden, these witnesses are no longer willing to talk. And now there's not a gun in Snoop's hand, and the trial can proceed. And what David Kenner did smartly was he moved up a civil trial because there was a wrongful death civil trial. And he moved that up so he could find out who the witnesses were. And then he sent the LAPD and the Compton PD to intimidate him. Now, there's a recovery operation that's put on by these dirty cops. They go into the Pacific Division and they steal the evidence out of the evidence locker. And these thieves that go in to do this look around and they see guns, they see drugs, they see money. They're looking in these evidence lockers and they're like, oh my God, this is a treasure trove. Well, what happens in Compton, right? 55 gallons of PCP missing, 90 kilos of cocaine missing, 2,400 guns missing out of the evidence locker in Compton too. And so it wasn't just LAPD that this was happening in, and there were other evidence lockers at different places within LAPD. And Rafael Perez actually uses a different name, a different Perez name, goes in and he steals evidence out of the evidence locker, and that's what he ultimately gets busted for. But now you have these guys that are sitting inside the record label. They're going to parties, they're going to things. It's basically an army that are nefarious guys. And at all Death Row Records events, they are monitoring police frequencies. It is a separate layer of security that they have. And I talked to another security guard for Death Row. There was actually an even darker and deeper layer of security, which were these hood guys. And if anybody, it wasn't just the Bloods.
Some Crips too.
They had Crips too, and these guys were unseen. They would be hiding inside of a car, that kind of thing. And when they were needed and they were called for, they were there. So let's say an artist was about to get into trouble with something. Well, these guys would, run a car up on them or, whatever they needed to do to take the heat away from the artist, because they had to protect the artists at all costs. The artists were bringing them in money. So there's a thing that happens at the El Rey Theater. A guy named Kelly Jamerson is beaten at the El Rey Theater. There were so many off-duty cops that were working there that if they would have pursued charges, and Reggie Wright Sr. calls over to the investigating officer and says, hey, you're going to ruin a lot of careers if we move forward with this. Can we just like let this one go? And they decide not to move forward because it was too complicated, even though there were many eyewitnesses that saw exactly what happened. And it would have taken death row artists that would have been now off the street and incarcerated for life, or, you know, for at least a number of years. They would have no longer been relevant. And so this becomes the formula, the method of operation that is happening inside death row records. And now these corrupt cops team up with Reggie, and they decide that they're going to topple death row records. And one of the corrupt cops happens to be Sharitha Knight's boyfriend. He's a
Kevin
cop.
Gaines?
That's Kevin Gaines. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so have you ever heard of a wife plotting to kill her husband to take away his wealth? I mean,
Yeah.
that's like, you know, that happens all the
Common.
time. Yeah,
Yeah, that's true crime.
that's common. And
Yeah,
so
that's on the forensic files all the time.
yeah, well, and there, you know, whether she was a witting participant or a non-witting participant, I really don't know. I've never interviewed her. She really needed to be interviewed by the sheriffs or by LAPD, but they weren't interested in doing any of that. So you have Kevin Gaines, who has kind of a run-in with Suge. He also has payback that he wants to give. And these guys are all involved in orchestrating this hit. Now, the one thing that they do in the Tupac murder, they have the streets handled, they have the signals handled, they have everything handled. They got radios, communications, police scanners, all that stuff. They pull over Suge and Pac, and when everything's set, that's when they're going to let Suge and Tupac go. Now, have you ever been to Las Vegas on a fight night?
Not on a fight night, but I've been to Vegas, yes.
Well, I've been to Vegas on a fight night.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah, it is crazy.
Wall-to-wall traffic and
Wall-to-wall
people.
traffic. I mean, it takes forever to go anywhere. And even a little bit later on in night, it is just still packed. It's packed till midnight. You know, it's packed past midnight. I mean, I've been on the strip at, 1 a.m. when it's packed. But
Yeah.
a fight night, I mean, it's like off the chain packed on a fight night.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a Cadillac being able to just roll up alongside of a BMW that's trapped on a fight
Furious
night?
timing. Furious
And-
timing.
And
I mean,
they
how do
can,
you find that? I think of like when I go to like the Patriots games, it's like
Yeah.
wall-to-wall traffic. To find a car among that traffic,
oh yeah, no,
like
I mean, it's,
it would be so difficult. So like it doesn't make sense. You're right.
it doesn't make
Because-
sense. And so it's a sophisticated hit. It's not Keefy D. They just rolled up and, and I just handed the gun on the back seat and, and we shot out and we just happened to roll up alongside him. That's all bullshit. That didn't happen. That was an orchestrated hit. That was a military grade operation. And that was right turn, left turn to escape. I mean, these are all planned. This is a planned assassination. Suge Knight says it. It was a planned assassination.
Yeah, Suge Knight has basically come out now, and
Well,
he's pointing
I mean,
the finger at Reggie
Suge-
too.
Suge Knight talked to me in 2018, and I basically held on to that for 2 years because I always look at a piece of evidence like that, and I come out and say like these preposterous things. Like they flipped out when I said, and Rafael Perez was at the Peterson, and he came out and he kicked those shell casings, and they all just flipped out. Reggie, Kading, and even RJ for a minute was like screaming at me.
you
There's
sure?
no way that didn't happen. None of
Yeah.
that. But I had the actual Wallace civil trial case documents. I had them all. And,
Wow.
in there, they actually stipulated that Rafael Perez
Was there?
was there in his uniform on duty at LAPD, and he was kicking the shell casings and he was contaminating the crime scene. And so, I have all this stuff, right? I have the actual Cedars-Sinai because they were also at the Biggie was taken to Cedars-Sinai Hospital, which is right around the corner from the Peterson, not far away at all. And there were people that were coming up handing shell casings off, and they were getting them entered into evidence. Now, Cedars-Sinai Hospital, let's see. Why would none of that security footage be available? Do the same people that run Cedars-Sinai also own the music industry and they can just make something go away? Probably, because all the surveillance footage of people coming in and handing shell casings to the cops goes missing. That's all gone. And none of the cops that were on duty at Cedars-Sinai Hospital actually tried to stop somebody and get a name, get a phone number, get an ID. No, none of that happened either. And so, we start to see this whole pattern of bungling the case before the case even starts. But in the Tupac murder, right, which is what Keefe-D's on trial for, in the Tupac murder, this was a well orchestrated and planned hit. And how do we know that? Michael Moore is standing next to Reggie Wright Jr. at the club 662, and he hears, "Got him," come over the radio. Now, I interviewed somebody else who I don't want to get dead, but they also were standing next to somebody else that had a radio, and they heard the "got him." They heard the "don't say nothing" over the radio. And Rafael Perez and David Mack were at the Peterson Automotive Museum the day before looking at security. They were scoping it all out. So this at the Peterson was an organized hit. At the Tupac assassination, it was an organized hit. There were radios, comms, there was, they knew the routes, they knew everything. And the mistake that they made in the Tupac murder is they used shooters that were gangbangers because they were going to try and sell the Orlando Anderson came back and it was just a gang thing. But here's the problem. Suge wasn't dead. Tupac wasn't dead. They were both expected to survive. Neither of them had life-threatening wounds. And you hear the first press release that comes out and it's on video and he says, neither of them have life-threatening wounds. And then you have a doctor a day later come out and say, Tupac is expected to survive. Now, even back then, 96, right? We know that doctors weren't going to come out and say that a celebrity was going to live unless there was a very high likelihood that it was true because they didn't want to be sued for malpractice. And so doctors just don't say that. So it looked like this whole thing was a catastrophe. Now you can imagine the people that kind of run things that had greenlit this, whether it was the city officials in Vegas, whether it was the handlers that were corporate, that with the big money, the insurance, who knows who it was, right? But they're probably calling these corrupt cops that were in charge of this, screaming at them like, how did this thing go so sideways? Neither of these guys is going to die. We have a real problem here. And so these corrupt cops, and yeah, it was got them, heard over the radio. And, Shug talks about it now. Warren G has come out and he said that Snoop had one of those radios and that they were listening to it real time. And so
Snoop knew about it.
Snoop knew about it. Yeah.
That's why Snoop didn't go to Vegas, apparently.
That's it.
You mentioned Michael Moore. For people that don't know, Michael Moore was a security guard working for Reggie Wright Jr.
Yeah.
And he had a gun on him. And he was told not to guard Tupac and just meet them at the club.
Well, he was told, first off, that he had to disarm because Reggie had come earlier in the day with George Kalisis. And I don't know whether George Kalisis got U.S. attorney, but I know he was up for U.S. attorney. The original bike cop that showed up was Michael McDonald, and he became the head of the Republican Party in Nevada. And the sheriff became the governor of Nevada. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. But anyway, so Michael Moore was told that he couldn't carry his gun that night. And Michael Moore said, well, I'm sorry, guys. You don't own my CCW. I do. And I have the right to carry my firearm, and I'm not going to give it up. And so then Reggie pulled Michael Moore off of guarding Tupac and put Frank Alexander on where Frank did not have a gun in a car that was out of gas. I mean, you talk about just, comedy of errors, but that's the situation that they found themselves in. And, so car rolls up alongside with gangbangers. The confession letter says who those gangbangers are. It's never been disproven. Greg immediately attacked the confession letter, which tends to lead me to believe that maybe there's some truth to the confession letter. And there's 3 people in the car, a driver, 2 shooters. The driver's also supposed to shoot, but he says his gun jammed. There's shots fired. One of the girls says that over the roof of the car. Shug says there were multiple guns, so he tends to corroborate that. And so these gangbangers are not very good, and the whole thing is a complete and total messed up situation. And so the handlers are, I'm sure, calling up screaming, you guys can't do anything right. We put all this money into this operation and it didn't even work, and neither Tupac or Suge are going to die. And, I'm just sure that there was hell to pay, right? So these guys had to prove that they could actually carry out a hit. So what do? I think it's a Wednesday or a Tuesday, they show up on Mayo Street and they kill Bobby Finch. And Bobby Finch is one of those murders that I spent quite a bit of time investigating, and I sent out postcards. I got 2,000 postcards and I sent them out. I actually went to Mayo Street and Pearl, the next street over, and I knocked on doors and I talked to people. And Tim Brennan, who is the through line, right, to this, he does the affidavit. The affidavit becomes Greg Kading's book, and then it becomes Once Upon a Time in Compton. And so Greg Kading and Tim Brennan are kind of the controllers of the narrative. And the narrative is that it was a red car that rolled up alongside Bobby Finch, and they shot him dead. He was shot dead right there. Well, when I actually went out and started knocking on doors and talking to people, it wasn't a red car, because they were trying to sell this whole gang war thing. And that it was the Pyrus came and the Bloods, the Pyrus, they came and they killed Bobby Finch. Well, turns out that's not the case. Nobody remembers any police investigation into that murder. Nobody remembers anybody from Compton PD ever coming and speaking with them. Here's what I think it is. I think when you have the weak link in a plan, you have to prove to the people that pay you that you're competent, that you can pull off a hit. You have Bobby Finch idling in front of his own home. He's waiting for his next door neighbor to come out because they go to the gym. It's the one predictable thing he does every day. And they know where he's going to be and when he's going to be there. It's Compton. It's a quiet street. They're able to roll up. They're able to block it off on one end, and then on the other end, they're able to block it off, and they're able to roll up alongside Bobby Finch. And it's highly likely that the person who killed Bobby Finch is somebody who knew him, because they talked to him for 3 or 4 minutes before opening fire. They fired 13 shots. 11 of those shots hit Bobby Finch. And if you listen to Tim Brennan about it, Bobby Finch was shot dead. Well, that's not really the case. Bobby Finch lived for 45 minutes. He went to Martin Luther King Hospital. They actually cracked his rib cage and they massaged his heart because they came so close to saving his life. But 11 of the bullets had hit him. Does that sound like a gangbanger to you?
Sounds like an assassination. 11
That's
bullets.
another, yeah. And so they had to prove that they could do this, or they were not going to be allowed by their handlers to do this again. And so when we get to the Biggie Smalls killing, they have figured out how to do killings And the killing in Biggie Smalls is super efficient. There is a man who rolls up right in front of a fire truck. He stops, opens his car door, his gun falls out. He picks his gun up and he fires into the air a few rounds right in front of the fire department. And then he jumps back in his car and starts driving down Wilshire Boulevard. Well, what do you think happens when that happens? All the cops that are in the area are now being drawn away from the Peterson Automotive Museum. And that is just minutes before the hit actually happens on Biggie. And they have radios, they have their comms, everything is coordinated. Rafael Perez, David Mack, Kevin Gaines are all there at the Peterson. Reggie Wright Jr. most likely was there too. And they orchestrate this hit. The car was actually already sitting at the corner. It had been there for hours and hours and hours. Well, wait a minute. You don't tow a car that's sitting at the corner? Well, that's an anomaly, right? And Eugene Deal makes a positive ID. There's two other witnesses that make a positive ID. Marilyn Droz is the one who actually draws the artist sketch, and the artist sketch looks like Amir Muhammad. Amir Muhammad is the one who visits David Mack first after he's arrested and goes down for the bank robbery. He shows up at jail to visit David Mack, and that's how he comes on Russell Poole's radar screen. And he is the spitting image of the likeness that has been drawn by the LAPD artist sketcher, which is Marilyn Droz. And, you know, this screams of a sophisticated murder. Now, if LAPD was worried about it because a sophisticated murder like that happened, they would be terrified if it was like the SLA that had done it. And do you remember, I don't know if you remember the Symbionese Liberation Army, Patty Hearst, all that.
Yep.
You know, we were terrified of, you know, the SLA back in the day. And I grew up in LA. And so I remember a lot of this history. Now, if there was a sophisticated group out there, or if it was the Muslim Brotherhood, or if it was, you know, the Weather Underground.
Was it the CIA?
Yeah, but when it's the CIA, or when it's the LAPD, or when it's somebody that is, you know, allowed to get away with this stuff, then they're just not going to investigate that. But a sophisticated crime like this, they would certainly want to figure out who done it. If it was a group, let's say terrorists from out of the country, you know, they would be digging into it, and they would be, but that's not what happens. I mean, they never parade anybody out there. And then, of course, you know, the crazy thing, right? You have Greg Kading running around saying it was Poochie. And, you know, I say that to the Pyrus that I know down at Compton, and they laugh at me. They go, because I show them the artist rendering, you know, of the shooter, and they laugh. They're like, Poochie doesn't look anything like that. They think it's the funniest thing. Greg Kading doesn't realize what a butt he is of the joke down in places like Piru City, you know, Piru Street. And, you know, I spent a lot of time down there with those guys, and they laugh and laugh and laugh that Poochie is the shooter, according to Greg Kading. But Greg Kading has one thing and one thing only, and he wants to blame it on the dead guy. And so we roll around to 2002, and you have Christopher Wallace's family who files a lawsuit against the city of Los Angeles. And this lawsuit is no joke. This lawsuit is like going for broke. They want $393 million, which in today's dollars is probably $1 billion in today's dollars. That's a lot of money.
So that would bankrupt them.
Oh, yeah.
The city of LA would probably go bankrupt if they had to pay that out.
And then when you find out from the FBI files that Kevin Gaines was in Las Vegas from 2 days before Tupac was shot until 2 days after Tupac dies. And rolling back just a second, you know, Tupac and Suge both expected to survive. Well, the very last day, Snoop comes to visit. Somebody probably slipped in, put something in the IV. I've talked to emergency room doctors and nurses. They say it'd be the easiest thing. You're super vulnerable when you're in a hospital and you got an IV straight into your vein, so anything that's put in there is going straight into your vein. So it's likely something happened to him. There is a coroner's vehicle that is idling inside the loading dock at the hospital and waiting for Tupac to die before he even starts having a heart attack. They wheel his body into the ambulance, or not the ambulance, the coroner's vehicle. They rush him off to get a quick autopsy. What does that sound like? To me, that sounds like the Charlie Kirk thing. They didn't have enough time in the Charlie Kirk thing to do a proper autopsy before the body was collected. And Tupac's body, similar. And there's the leaked autopsy photo. I'm told by some of the cops that I've talked to in Las Vegas that this was one of those things where the cops were allowed to come in and participate however they wanted to participate in that autopsy because cops hated Tupac. And so, Tupac dies and gets his autopsy and then rushed off to be cremated. And that's a violation of Nevada law to be cremated so quickly. But in Nevada, according to Gordon Martins, who is a detective who was running for sheriff, if you want it, you can get it in Las Vegas by just paying for it. And it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter how illegal it is.
Yeah, it's funny. If you have to pick a more corrupt city than LA, maybe Vegas. I mean, those are the two cities that you think of. And you can get away with things if you have money.
If you have money. And there's a drug ring that Gordon Martins talks about, and it's run out of Compton, and it includes Las Vegas, and it includes the sheriffs and the LAPD, and it's run out of Compton. What does that sound like? That sounds like this group of people, right? And I did a film called American Federale, and I interviewed the only Mexican federale who was an American citizen. And he told me, because I laugh with him, I was like, come on, dude, right here is the wall. I said, your side is where all the corruption is. I said, my side over here, there's no corruption. And I was so naive back then.
Yeah.
That was around 2000 when I said those words to him. He laughed. He thought that was the funniest thing. He said, Mike, who do you think we give the drugs to? I said, oh, I don't know. He said, we give it to the cops. We give it to the sheriffs and to the police. And so there's a faction within all of these law enforcement agencies that are doing dirty deeds. And when I was recently looking at some Russell Poole notes and whatnot, because I was, I'm going to do something special, I think, on Wednesday for the anniversary. But anyway, one of the notes that he confiscated when he went and raided Rafael Perez's home and did the, served the search warrant, was a note that said, get the weakest person you can to carry out your dirty deeds. And that was Rafael Perez's motto. You have Russell Poole, who has the homicide investigators creed, saying no power is going to stop him from finding out the truth. And you got Rafael Perez who's saying, get the weakest person you can to do your dirty deed. And, that's who we were dealing with here. And Rafael Perez is so smart that he can speak Mexican Spanish, Puerto Rican Spanish, Spain Spanish, and he can immediately flip to English and back and forth, and you don't know where he's from. He can be white, he can be black, he can be Mexican, he can be anything he wants to be. And those are the kind of people that the CIA uses. That's a valuable asset.
Totally. Can blend in too.
You can blend in. And, that's how smart this guy is. Omar Bradley played chess with him. And Omar Bradley doesn't do anything but play chess. And Rafael Perez beat Omar Bradley 2 out of 3 games. And I think maybe Rafael Perez threw the 3rd game or whatever, just so that, Omar Bradley wouldn't feel bad. But so you've got these corrupt cops it's starting to bubble up at LAPD. Russell Poole's being told to stand down. A lawsuit gets filed, and there's a problem at LAPD. Somebody inside of LAPD leaks to the judge that there are file folders that are being withheld from the plaintiffs in the civil lawsuit. And the judge shuts down court that day, marches over to LAPD, goes in and conducts a search, and finds a treasure trove of files, a foot and a half thick, that have been withheld from the plaintiffs in the lawsuit. And so these files have now caused a mistrial in the first case. They're ordered to pay millions of dollars in attorney's fees in that first case, and they file a second case. And when they file that second case, LAPD does something that they've never done before. They bring in a police chief. Now, not the head police chief, not the guy at the top, but there's other under chiefs, and they bring in one from the outside. In the entire history of LAPD, they've never done that. And they hire a guy named Michael Burko. And Michael Burko is a fixer. And he comes in. And Michael Burko, he was accused of inappropriate, relations with some of the subordinates. And, he's got all kinds of troubles. And he keeps getting promoted. And one of the last things that he did that I was able to find was he was an advisor to the Capitol Police during January 6th. I mean, so he goes from being at the LAPD, he leaves to go to Savannah. Then he becomes the head of it was Bratton's company. He gets hired by Bratton. Bratton takes him with him. When he leaves, he must be a valuable guy because he goes to work for that company. And then he becomes something with the military, some kind of investigator for the military. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. This guy has spy written all over him, intelligence community written all over him. But I think the whole Kading cover-up, we'll just call it the three books that are recommended reading together.
The other two.
The other two. All right. And I think that is the Burko cover-up. Now, Kading was in some hot water. 2006, supposedly he goes to work for the task force, on the Biggie thing. All right, sure. I mean, maybe that happened. Maybe it didn't. I don't really know. But I can tell you this. In 2006, he was doing the Toros Ramos thing, and that bubbled up. And by 2008, he was in big trouble with the Toros Ramos thing. And there was a Frank's hearing, and in that Frank's hearing, they said reckless disregard for the truth, because there's a big difference between listening to a surveillance tape and hearing that Tony was going to do something to Bobby, then Tony was going to do something with Bobby. And these are the kind of things that he uses to actually get the affidavit to conduct a search. Okay. And so once they rule that he had no probable cause, this causes convictions to be overturned in the Toros Ramos case. Now, Kading says he was cleared. Who was he cleared by? He was cleared by Internal Affairs, right? Well, who's in Internal Affairs? There is, I mean, so the Internal Affairs people that are actually covering up the Biggie Smalls murder, and Burkow was one of them. Yame Crystal files a lawsuit against LAPD and Burke, Anyway, files the lawsuit, and she claims that she was the one that collected all of the evidence in the Biggie Smalls killing, including confessions of LAPD officers to being involved in the Biggie Smalls murder. And she had it on her computer. There is a coworker that's with, at the next desk. There is a Post-it that's put on this guy's desk that says, hey, if you can make Yame Crystal's computer disappear, I'll buy you a week of lunches. She reports it, nothing happens. And guess what? Her computer all of a sudden goes missing. And she complains about it. She gets retaliated against. She files a lawsuit and she gets $1 million settlement from the LAPD because they just don't want to have this Biggie Small stuff bubble up. They don't want the cover up. And evidently, the entire time that she was in internal affairs, they were covering up all malfeasance that was happening. And Kading is cleared by the same internal affairs department that is making all of this evidence in the Biggie Smalls murder go away. And this is where we're at in this case. And now the final pinning of the case is Keefe D. Because if we could just get a conviction with Keefe D, we can just
It's all for
put a bow on
all
it.
over for the cops. The cover up is complete.
The cover up is complete. We
Yeah,
can
it's a
say,
limited hangout.
oh yeah, it's a limited hangout. And you said that earlier, and I was gonna comment. You are 100% spot on. This whole thing is a limited hangout. Is this judge really going to allow evidence into court about the participation of the corrupt cops in the case? Probably not. I mean, why are they bringing Reggie Wright Jr. back as a witness again when they by now must know that he's a suspect in the killing of Tupac and was always a suspect in the killing of Biggie? I mean, that's not the kind of guy you want as a witness.
Yeah,
Also,
and he lies a lot too.
and
I mean,
he's
it's
a
documented.
He's a convicted felon.
Yeah, that's
He
true.
got-
He's a convicted felon
he
too.
got convicted
Ex-cop, convicted felon for drugs.
for drug trafficking and money laundering. I mean, you cannot make this stuff
Yeah.
up. What
And he's
kind
made
of
so many statements that are
Oh yeah,
conflicting. He lies a lot. We're going to play one of those in a second. Because I do want to speak about what's going to happen this week in the trial. But before we get there, you did kind of leave one thing that I want to make sure you mentioned
yeah.
a couple times, but I want to make sure we kind of drill down on it for people that don't know. Russell Poole,
Yeah.
he passed away how many years ago now?
It's going to be 11 years on Wednesday.
Okay. And you did all this research with him,
I
wrote a
did.
book with him.
I wrote 2 books with him,
Yeah.
and he and I were, talking to each other 5-6 times a day at the end. I'm the one that set up the meeting because he and I originally started talking to Jimmy McDonnell, and I had worked on Jimmy McDonnell's campaign. I knew him. He was the sheriff at the time. He's now the head of LAPD. I mean, you just can't make this stuff up. And there's a through line with the LAPD chiefs. You had Bernard Parks, then you had Braden come in from the outside because the feds brought him in for the consent decree. And the consent decree was signed by Mayorkas, who was the head of Homeland Security under Biden, who was bringing in all the illegals, right? And so there's this through line. They all are, it's a revolving door. But then if you look at, okay, who comes after Bratton? Well, it's Charlie Beck. Charlie Beck was brought in to clean up Rampart. Michael Moore comes after. Who was he? He was the captain in charge of the Rampart division. And so, you basically have this through line. Who's Jimmy McDonnell? Well, Jimmy McDonnell's who I set the meeting up with. And I actually love Jimmy McDonnell. He's a super nice guy. I mean, I worked on his campaign and, I consider him to be a friend. And I don't think that he was somehow involved in the death of Russell Poole. We'll never know. But anyway, upshot is that I had to corner Jimmy McDonnell at an event. It was called Leadership LA that I'm an alumni of. Jimmy McDonnell's also an alumni, and he was the keynote speaker that day. So I knew he was going to be there. It's an intimate group. There was probably 60 people there total. And he was the keynote speaker talking about his $18 billion budget, and how little of it actually had anything that he could trim because all those contracts were set years in advance. And he didn't really have a lot that he could do with the sheriffs at the time. But anyway, I cornered him and I said, hey, because he had stopped communicating with Russell and I, and he knew Russell from when Russell was at LAPD. And when Charlie Beck was named the chief, it came down to Charlie Beck or Jimmy McDonnell, and Charlie Beck got the job. But Jimmy McDonnell never disclosed to me that he was the one that showed Phil Carlin, the Biggie murder books. And I found that out through Phil Carlin, one of his interviews. I was like, oh, really? And we
For
were,
people that know, Phil Carlin was an FBI agent.
yeah,
That
and they were going to
the
make
feds
arrests.
actually thought that something was up with this, and they were
Yeah,
looking
well,
at it.
they were going to make arrests. They were
Yeah.
actually going to make arrests in this case. And so Phil Carlin talks about it pretty candidly. You know, it was shut down because there was a deal cut with the head of the FBI and the head of LAPD, and that probably was Bratton coming in to run the department for the United States government and not for LA. And Bratton comes in, then it's Charlie Beck, then it's Michael Moore. Michael Moore was the captain in charge of Rampart when all this malfeasance happened. So they keep a lid on it. And Jimmy McDonald comes in after because he's the one that showed the Biggie murder books to Phil Carlin. He's the one that walked him through all the evidence. And then, you know, at the time he showed it to him, Phil Carlin said that there were, you know, like the photo of Rafael Perez, David Mack, and Michelle Parks was still in the murder book. And he went to go look at it again, and the photo's gone. And Compton Police Department was raided by the LAPD. And what were they looking for? They were looking for that photo. Have you ever heard of a city of Compton or any city being raided by a neighboring police operation? They were looking for that photo when the Compton PD was raided by the LAPD. You can't make this stuff up. I mean, it's just crazy.
It is.
So
yeah.
So back to Russell.
Yeah.
Russell was the lead investigator in this case. And we had written Tupac 187 together. And then he asked me to find him an attorney because the confession letter was leaked. Greg Kading was the one that derailed it. And he went to a meeting with LAPD, and Darren Dupree was at the meeting, and he was blindsided by Darren Dupree. And he wanted to sue the city of Los Angeles a second time because he felt like them not pursuing this lead was a big deal, and them trying to derail him and trying to muddy up his reputation. He felt like he had a pretty good lawsuit. And I knew Anthony Brooklier. And so I said, hey, well, let's start talking to Anthony Brooklier about this. Now, little did I know that Anthony Brooklier is David Ketter's best friend.
Wow.
And I knew Anthony Brooklier socially because I would go in Century City every Saturday. I was running the newspaper there, and I would go listen to a friend of mine play the guitar at the mall in Century City, and Brooklier would be there, and he'd come sit with me, and we just, you know, talk about life. And I knew him socially. I didn't know him any other way. Well, Brooklier was the one who actually brokered the deal for Pablo Escobar's best friend when the feds came after him. I mean, and that was a guy named John Malpezzi. And for those of you that have followed my channel, I went to go find Little Half Dead one day, and I was with John Malpezzi. And I used to always think John Malpezzi was bullshit till one day I was with Anthony Brooklier and John Malpezzi, and I said, hey, he tells me he was Pablo Escobar's best friend. And Brooklier said, well, I'm the one who cut his plea deal, so I think you should listen to him. I was like, oh, really? It's true? He's like, yeah. But he didn't disclose to me that he was David Kenner's best friend. He didn't disclose to me that he had once represented Suge Knight. He didn't disclose to me that he knew all about this. And he and David Kenner both took a plea deal for their 1995 taxes because they failed to misstate income. Now, isn't that kind of strange that both of them would take a plea deal, and they were both allowed to continue to practice law? That it's a felony if you and I do it, but if somebody else does it, oh, no, they get to keep their bar card and they get to keep their livelihood, and they just get a slap on their wrist. It's not a big deal. But anyway, so one day I called him up and I said, hey, man, we've been having all these calls with Russell Poole. I said, you didn't disclose to me that you once represented Suge Knight. He goes, yeah, I guess I should have done that. That was kind of unethical of me. And then I had the manuscript for Tupac 187, and I was in Century City, and I I was going through the manuscript while I was sitting there listening to music, and he came over and he said, "I'll give you $1,000 cash right now if you let me read that." I was like, "No, man, you can't read this book." Anyway, I got up and I kind of ran away. I wasn't going to let him read the book. But anyway, this stuff is so close to the power structure of Los Angeles. A city councilman named Jack Weiss went to work for Bill Bratton and Michael Burko after he was termed out as a city councilman. And he had formerly been a prosecutor, and he worked for this big company that did investigations in places like Afghanistan and Iraq. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, right? And they were based out of Falls Church, Virginia. So, we can just see the through line of the intelligence community's hand in all this stuff. And one more thing that I'll say about the intelligence community: how do we know that the intelligence community was inside death row? We learned that from Nina Bidwashar. She was she was a publicist. She owned her own magazines, and she was working at Death Row Records. And there was a guy named Calhoun, I forget his first name. His father was in the CIA, and he had fallen in love with Nina, and he had basically kidnapped her. And there was a woman named Regina King, I think is her name, right? She's a big time actress, and she is the one that was able to get Nina on a plane and get her escaped from being kidnapped by the CIA. And this is while she was affiliated with Death Row. All this craziness is going on. And this is after Suge is locked up. This is Snoop trying to leave the record label. This is like all this craziness that's going on inside of Death Row. And all the craziness at Death Row stops the minute Reggie Wright Jr. takes the helm. The stuff that's going missing, whatever, that all stops.
The ex-cop security guy takes over Death Row when Reggie's in jail. I also want to wrap this up, though, because we talked about Russell.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you finished the story about Russell. You met Russell, you wrote some books, you set up this meeting. Tell people what happens that don't know the story here.
I met Russell through his aunt and uncle. I worked on a humanitarian project with them, and they said, "Hey, you got to meet our nephew." And I started having conversations over the phone and over emails with Russell. And then finally we met in 2013, and they're telling me about Tupac and all this stuff, and it's like, it's the first time you ever hear about this. You're hearing all these names, and it's just confusing, So I had to actually go back to the beginning and just start writing out one name at a time with all this stuff. And that was the genesis of beginning Tupac 187, that book. And so there's a confession letter that lands in his lap in 2013. He sets up a meeting for me to go meet with journalist Chris Blatchford. I go get a copy of the confession letter, and I independently corroborate the story behind the confession letter. And in writing Tupac 187, we get a statement from Chris Blatchford. And so we get that book finished and we get it released. And he and I are still not satisfied that the investigation is concluded. We start to have meetings with Dave Demersion from the DA's office, and we're meeting with him socially. He's in a band, he plays in his band, and then when he takes a break, he comes and sits with us and we talk to him about the case. We hand him Tupac 187. He wasn't into it. We redouble our efforts, and this is a course of over months. We come up with 45 Tupac murder facts and the framework of Chaos Merchants that is largely as it has been released. And we present it one last time to Dave Demersion. He finally says, "Yes, I want to do this." He's about to retire. He's looking for one of those high profile cases that he can hang his calling card on and say, "Hey, I did something good here." And so he wants to champion this case. He says, "I need a homicide investigator." Russell had already struck out with LAPD. That just wasn't going to happen. So we started actually having conversations with Jimmy McDonnell. At a certain point, Jimmy McDonnell cuts off all communications with us. And when Jimmy McDonnell cuts off communications, we figure, well, he's the sheriff at the time. And we figure, well, we still want to try and figure this out. So I go to this meeting, and it's the alumni only. I cornered Jimmy McDonnell. He was pissed off that I cornered him, but then he said, okay, I'll give you your meeting. He sets up a meeting 3 weeks in advance of when the meeting was actually supposed to happen, and I was invited to the meeting originally. So Russell and I were going to go to sheriff's headquarters. We were going to present the Tupac murder facts and the first 11 pages of Chaos Merchants. And then we are also in touch with Tom Mesereau, which is Suge's defense counsel, and another attorney that was involved in Suge's defense. And we get a call. I get the call first. I talk to him. He tells me that an off-duty sheriff had let the shooters into the nightclub the night that the One Oak shooting happened, and Suge Knight was shot 7 times and lived, and that the same off-duty sheriff had driven the shooters to the airport the next day. And from that point on, this meeting becomes much more elevated in terms of the danger. It was a heightened danger. And so we're hearing this information, and he gets a call from the captain of homicide, and he says, hey, Russell, what is it you want to talk about? He said, well, the first thing I want to know is about this off-duty sheriff that let the shooters into the club and that drove them to the airport the next day. And the captain says, how did you find out about that? And so Russell says, so it's true. And he said, yes, it's true. And so I get disinvited to that meeting. And now Russell is going to go to that meeting by himself. We learned that I'm disinvited 3 days before the meeting. I talked to Russell about not going to the meeting. I say, come on, man, you really want to go to that meeting all by yourself? And it was said to him, like, come alone, right? Come alone to the meeting. I mean, what? Dude, what are you doing? He goes, no. I don't want to disappoint Jimmy McDonnell. I have a huge amount of respect for him. He's the one that set up the meeting. I'll be fine. Russell goes to the meeting. I talked to him about an hour before. He was in Diamond Bar. He's driving. He said, yeah, I'm about an hour away. It's going to happen. I'm excited. He had a spring in his step. He had a new person that he was going to have lunch with afterwards, that a relationship looked like it was about to happen. So he had a spring in his step. He goes to the meeting, and he dies in the meeting at sheriff's headquarters, which is probably one of the safest places to have a heart attack or an aneurysm or whatever they said it was, right? And I hear 3 different stories about it. I hear that he was in the waiting room, he never got in. I hear that he goes into the meeting and he never gets to present anything, and he just grabs his chest and he dies. And I hear that he presented the most of what he had to say. And then at the end, the conclusion of the meeting, he grabbed his chest and he passed away. And then the coroner's report comes that it was a brain aneurysm. So I don't know if you grab your chest when there's a brain aneurysm. And so, there's so many questions about this. I called Jimmy McDonnell. Jimmy McDonnell has the captain on the phone with me. They apologized to me for Russell's death and what have you. I asked them who was in the meeting. They said there were 6 people total in the meeting with Russell. So that would be a seven people meeting, but they won't tell me who was there. They won't give me the names of who was there. I was like, what is this, like national security? No, you cannot know who was in that meeting. And so,
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing
So
is
Russell Poole, the retired LA Police
PD
Department
cop,
detective, is working with you, goes and meets with the sheriffs. They basically disinvite you, and he drops dead
in the
while he's
meeting
meeting with them about all of this.
to reopen the Tupac and Biggie murders.
Yeah.
And they come out with a statement and they say it was an unrelated case. And I called them on it, and they finally said, yeah, it was the Tupac and Biggie murders he was being on. Now, here's the crazy part. Greg Kading is almost immediately gloating about this. Reggie Wright Jr. is immediately gloating about it. You walk these things back. They had to have learned minutes afterwards that Russell had died. I mean, it's just impossible that they didn't find out about it within minutes, because you look at how quickly they were on the internet gloating about it. And
Reggie was the one that broke it to the world that Russell
he
died.
was.
He was taunting, and he
Yeah.
was like very happy about it.
Oh, he was thrilled. He was, this was the best thing that ever happened. It was like, God don't like ugly, and what have you. Anyway, upshot, Greg Kading said that he knew about this meeting for 3 weeks before it happened. And so you walk that back. It was 3 weeks, almost to the day, that I'd set up the meeting. So Greg Kading somehow knew that there was a meeting that was going to happen in 3 weeks, and these guys had it on their radar screen. And we don't know that they weren't in the room. We have no idea.
Yeah, we have no idea who was there. It could have been Reggie Wright Jr. there, for crying out loud.
Reggie Wright Sr. Reggie Wright Sr. had retired a year previous. I mean, those guys could have been involved. They could have been in the meeting. Now, one of my friends that I've known for a long time is Sheriff Lee Baca. And so, a number of years ago, I did an interview with him, and he told me in the interview, Russell Poole was killed in the line of duty. And he was the one that was the sheriff just before Jimmy McDonnell. So if anybody knows anything about this, it would be Sheriff Lee Baca. And I actually have that. I've released it. I mean, he's, and so, look, what Michael Carlin thinks about this, nobody really cares about. What Sheriff Lee Baca thinks about it probably is something you should pay attention to.
Yeah, well, Russell Poole, too.
And Russell Poole,
who's
dead now.
Yeah.
And that's why I say, Sheriff Lee Baca told me that Russell was killed in the line of duty. Now, I don't know what he meant by that, but I kind of think, they really, really, really don't want these murders solved, because look, it's $8 billion. What's Russell's life worth? Is it worth $8 billion? I mean, we've seen people that have one hit song, they get murdered over the royalties to that hit song. $8 billion? No. They would kill us all, and they don't care about us anyway. And so now let's go back to KVD quickly. We have Dr. Fauci, who got on the stand in front of Congress, and he invoked his Fifth Amendment 111 times. He got up and he told us all kinds of lies about COVID. He told us hydroxychloroquine, all these things, right, that we can't use it. And so now all of a sudden he's had to invoke his Fifth Amendment rights, and he was granted immunity, right? Nothing's going to happen to him, but something is going to happen to KVD, because Dr. Fauci is part of the establishment. He's important to the establishment. KVD, unfortunately, is not important to the establishment. He's one of us. They would throw him under the bus in a heartbeat. And so I don't think we're going to see justice for Tupac. I don't think we're going to see justice for Biggie. However, I think we know the whole truth, and we know that 3 books are the cover-up, right? These are the 3 books that are the cover-up, and the cover-up is now complete.
Well, is it? I mean, that's the thing, because more talk on YouTube every day about this.
Oh, yeah.
And I just wonder what's going to happen next. Like, because witnesses.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, is Rafael Perez going to be called? Is if I was on the defense, I'd want to call Rafael Perez. I mean, is there any chance of that?
Do they have any power to compel Rafael Perez to come talk? I mean, apparently, according to Yame Crystal at Internal Affairs, Rafael Perez and David Mack made a confession to the murder of Biggie. So that's in her complaint for her wrongful termination and discrimination and what have you. She says that those guys made a confession, and she cataloged those confessions. So it's not like we wonder what happened. We know what happened. And that's the good news about it. I think there's enough stuff that has come to light now that we actually know what happened in Los Angeles and, the Biggie Smalls killing. We know what happened in Las Vegas. How high up it went, I mean, we don't know, but supposedly Oscar Goodman is going to take the stand. Supposedly the governor is going to take the stand, who was the former sheriff. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I
Anything can
mean,
happen.
I would be pulling them all out, like someone just said, like but beyond Rafael Perez, like David Mack,
Oh yeah,
Phil Carson.
yeah.
Why not bring the FBI agent out, Phil Carson? Like, what would he have to say? Like,
I
if I
mean,
was Reggie Wright Jr., I'd be pulling for all these people. Suge Knight is Suge Knight. Suge Knight's made a lot of statements. You've talked to Suge Knight. Is there any? He says he's not going to testify, but it almost seems like he might. Would Suge Knight actually testify? Is
well,
he on the witness
I
list?
mean,
Phil Carson.
hasn't Suge Knight already testified? I mean, he told me Perez and them was all involved. They tried to kill me too. And Perez and Sharitha and Reggie were great friends, and all three of those tried to plot. And when he says Perez and them was involved, who's the them? Well, that's Gaines and Mack. I
Yeah,
mean, he's already pretty much told us. And he went on
that's
Piers
true.
Morgan and he said the same thing. I
Yeah.
mean,
I mean, do you think his defense team is up on this shit? Like, are they going to actually try to get these? Like you said, they could just play the clips. They could play the
how are you going to
clips.
get it into evidence? I mean, I don't know. I don't know how you get it into evidence.
Yeah.
But I can tell you this:
Well,
the
I mean,
public.
if he testified, that would be the easiest way to do it. That's why.
Yeah,
Like,
I
do you
mean,
think he would? Would Suge Knight
well,
actually do it if they ask him to testify?
I don't see it happening. But I can tell you this: the prosecution was the one that put him on the witness list. So he said, "Whoever puts me on the witness list, it's not going to go good for you," which kind of invalidates his testimony too. And Suge
Huh?
Knight doesn't want to be embroiled in this because
I
he's
know.
just trying to survive. Do you really think Suge Knight, who was afraid of being murdered in the hospital, he was
Right.
afraid if he took sedation in the hospital that he was going to be unalived? And
Right.
so, do you think Suge Knight's going to put his body in control of Las Vegas? I don't see it happening. I wouldn't. And I'm
Mm,
not there. I'm not going to Las Vegas. I'm not
mm.
going to go. You won't see me in that
I was going to
courtroom.
ask you that. You're not going?
No, I'm not going. You know, I
I
mean,
was thinking about it, but I'm like, probably not. Yeah.
well, I'll tell you one thing. I was approved to go in and get court documents. And I went to go in a couple days ago, and I am no longer allowed to get those court documents. I have been blocked from getting.
Blacklisted?
I'm blacklisted by Las Vegas. They will no longer allow me to download the documents to follow along with the case. Isn't that crazy? I
It
mean,
is
what did I
crazy.
do? But
It's
they
fun.
know.
You know what? Yeah, I interviewed a former Las Vegas cop on here who actually had Suge Knight in his police car. Like, I think he pulled him over or something for some weed or something, and he was upset. He was telling him, all about Tupac, and
Yeah.
he wanted him to play some Tupac in the car, and he played some Tupac for him for Suge that night, and like Suge was really upset even then. So
Yeah.
it's funny. It's what yeah, I'm just wondering who some of these witnesses like you like. Do you think their defense is going to be good? Like, is Reggie going to be on the stand? Like, what do you think's going to happen this week?
Well,
This
I
trial.
will say this. The first few attorneys that KVD had, I blasted them. I said, these are the stupidest people in the world. And they're coming out and they're just saying idiotic things about the case. They didn't know the case. They weren't doing anything to really help KVD. This attorney that he has seems to be a very skilled attorney. I think if KVD has any shot at getting off of this, it's because of this attorney. I like this guy. I think he's a square shooter. But I can tell you this, if the system wants you, the system is going to get you. And in the case of Suge Knight, who we've just been talking about, I tried to get him an attorney at the end. I tried to get Suge Knight a very qualified criminal defense attorney, somebody that was recommended. It came through ABBA bail bonds, which they knew Suge, they liked Suge, they wanted to help him. And so they made this recommendation of a very rock solid attorney. The judge wouldn't approve it. The Sheriffs. Can you believe it? The sheriffs could actually block it. The sheriffs, their county council had to say it was okay. They wouldn't approve it. The DA wouldn't approve it. He goes to the judge, and the judge says, okay, well, you got to, in order to go visit him, you got to fax over this form. His secretary goes to fax over the form. Her number is blocked. She can't fax over the form. She goes to call the judge back. Her number is blocked. She can't call back. He tries to, they did everything dirty they could to Suge Knight to not give him a fair trial, and they forced him into that plea deal. His civil rights have been violated. He really has a good civil rights case against the city of Los Angeles, against the sheriffs, so he could actually win a big civil rights case. But I'll say this, if Suge Knight can get a fair trial in America, then anybody can. And if Suge Knight can't get a fair trial in America, then nobody can. And I think we're in territory where nobody really can get a fair trial because the system is rigged against all of us, folks. It's rigged against all of us. They want to take our money. They want to cause us health problems. We heard about the Nazis, right? And they were funded by bankers that also funded the Allies, right? You've heard that before.
It's funded both sides. They
Well,
usually
wait a
do.
minute.
The bankers usually do fund both sides. They make a lot of money on war.
So what about when a banker funds a pharmaceutical company to create something that's going to make us sick so that they can also sell us the cure? Aren't they
That's right.
funding both sides of the war?
I mean, isn't that the whole thing when you said Daryl Gates and Dare? I
Yeah.
mean, when we looked into Dare,
Yeah.
Dare increased drug use.
They increased
Dare
drug use.
didn't it reduce drug use for kids. It increased it. It was a marketing campaign.
Yeah.
You were so
Yep.
right on that. And Daryl Gates started it, and the
Yep.
LA police were
Yep.
freaking selling drugs. I mean,
That's it.
it's
That's it.
crazy, the whole thing. Yeah, I just wonder, like, if Reggie Wright Jr. gets on the stand and purges himself, are the feds going to do anything? Like, is there any Phil Carson out there? Is there anybody? No, you don't think so. You don't have any faith that there's going to
Well,
be any justice here.
I mean, here's the thing. Both Reggie and his father were caught drug trafficking, money laundering. The father takes a plea deal to just money laundering. The son takes a plea deal for drug trafficking and money laundering. There's mandatory federal minimums. None of that's adhered to. They got a slap on the wrist. Reggie Sr. didn't even do any time. They're both convicted felons now, but so what? None of it matters. And so do you really think that they want what Reggie and Reggie know about how the system really works to get out there? I mean, I don't think they do. And I don't think they want those guys out talking. And would they talk? I don't know. Maybe they would. And maybe that's something that everybody that's higher up needs to fear. I wouldn't want to stand next to either one of them in the next, whatever month or so. And KVD, hey, I worry about his safety because
Right.
the easiest thing is, oh, poor guy, he didn't last the whole trial, but we all know he was guilty. All right, well, we're moving on. Yeah, this trial's over. Case dismissed. I mean, I worry about Tyler Robinson. I mean, that guy's got Patsy written all over him, and I know people don't want to believe that stuff,
I
but
don't believe that.
they paved over the crime scene 2
Yeah.
days later, or 3 days later. I mean, what? You ever heard of anything like that? The SUV that transports Charlie gets sold off, and it's that's no longer available and they can't do any forensics on it. And, the shirt, where did that go? Nobody knows where the shirt went. And, I mean, all this stuff, we look at it and we shake our head and we go, hey, something ain't right here. But yet they're still up there on the podium telling us, well, Tyler Robinson was the lone shooter and he changed clothes 5 times and he went, 1,300 miles in one day. And, it's like none of this stuff is believable anymore. And they don't care that we don't buy it. They don't care. And they're not going to care that we don't buy the Tupac and the Biggie murders. They're not going to care. They don't care about us, bro. They don't care. We're fleas that they'd rather just get some flea dip for and kill us all.
Mm. Yeah.
And so, hey, I'm more advanced in my life than you are. And so I look at things kind of a little bit more realistically, maybe. And you know what? We just want to have a good life till the end, whatever that is. And, having stood up for something. And, if we can, we die on our feet. And, we die trying to do something, trying to make a difference, and trying to stand for the truth. Because that's the only thing that matters is the truth. And brother, I applaud you because you stand for the truth.
I mean, this is an interesting story. I've been following this for a long time, and so many questions because all these security guys came out.
Yeah.
So many of the guys that worked for Reggie have come out and made statements. One of them being Kevin Hackey, who apparently was working with the feds at the time.
Yeah.
And world and media says whatever happened to Kevin Hackey. I mean, he's another one. If I was Reggie's defense attorney, I'd be bringing up Kevin Hackey as a witness on this. What happened to Kevin Hackey? Did you find him credible or not? Some people don't find him credible. What do you think?
Well, you know what? I find him credible for sure. I mean, especially when he talked about Bobby Finch. I mean, the Bobby Finch thing is kind of interesting because Kevin Hackey said that within a minute or two after Bobby Finch was shot, he was on the phone with Reggie, and Reggie said he already knew that Bobby Finch was dead. And Reggie told Kevin Hackey, "Don't tell Suge." Why? And so 1 or 2 minutes after the shooting, they're having a conversation about Bobby Finch, and Kevin Hackey said he wouldn't have even known unless he had set it up. Those are Kevin Hackey's words. Those are not my words.
Mm.
And so, when you look at the Bobby Finch thing, he didn't die right away. He went to MLK and he was alive for 45 minutes. I talked to people who were at the hospital and, who knew intimately about it. He didn't die right away, but 2 minutes later, they knew he was going to die because they knew that he had been shot 11 times with 13 shots. And I spoke to 2 people who witnessed the actual vehicle. Those shots all looked like they went through the door of the vehicle. And so they were trying to prove that they could, 2 things, that they could orchestrate a hit and be successful with it. And the other thing was that they could shoot through a car. So I think they used some kind of armor-piercing rounds to shoot Bobby Finch. And that was the experience modification. They failed with the gangbangers. They came back with Bobby Finch, proved they could do it, and then they perfected it on the Biggie thing. And the Biggie thing was just orchestrated flawlessly. By the time they got to the Biggie, yeah, they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
They had it done. I mean, they knew. And, everything about the Biggie just doesn't scream gangbanger. It doesn't scream Poochie from the Pyru who came up there.
No.
No way.
It seems like a professional hit. This is another question that or comment that came up because Sugar's talked about David Kenner, the attorney for Death Row Records, who had represented Suge Knight at one point. A lot of the folks within that Death Row crew felt like it was David Kenner who was on that walkie-talkie that night saying, don't talk over the mic, don't talk over the walkie-talkie. And Suge immediately thought that too, because David Kenner used to tell all of them not to talk on the phones. He used to always warn them. So it sounded like something David Kenner would say. And Suge actually says he asked David Kenner about that. David Kenner denied it, got really mad at him about it. And then later on, when Kenner and Suge Knight had a falling out, Kenner's office sent Suge Knight all of his files. And within the files accidentally was a walkie-talkie that it seemed like it was like that David Kenner had one of the walkie-talkies. And that maybe he was the guy on the walkie-talkie.
He was the guy on the walkie-talkie. And how I know that, Michael Moore didn't talk about it publicly. Michael Moore died. He did talk about it privately to other people, and he said that what he heard was David Kenner on that walkie-talkie. So this isn't anything new to people who've been in the Tupac sphere, but when you got a criminal defense attorney, you really want to make sure you have your ducks in a row before you start talking about him. And that's why David Kenner has kind of gotten a pass and all this stuff. But David Kenner was also mentioned in the Chris Blatchford statement and the confession letter as being there at Balboa Park when this whole thing started. And that would give LA squarely the jurisdiction over both the Tupac and the Biggie murders. But LA clearly didn't want to do anything about it. But David Kenner was mentioned. Now, you think about it. We have 3 cover-ups, right? The first cover-up is, oh, it's Orlando Anderson, gangbanger. Okay, that's these 3 books. That's the one cover-up, right? The other one is East Coast, West Coast War. And that's also this cover-up, these 3 books, because it's East Coast, West Coast War. And the third one is Tupac's not dead. And you look at where did that come from, that Tupac's not dead? That was brought out almost immediately upon Tupac being shot. That Tupac, it really wasn't Tupac in the hospital, and Tupac made an escape. And so those are the 3 narratives. And you think about it, who would come up with that? Well, a criminal defense attorney would, because what is the biggest piece of evidence that somebody didn't commit a murder? Well, Tupac's not dead.
Yeah.
There's no body. And the body gets rushed over, the coroner's hearse is
Cremated.
idling. Yeah, it's idling in the loading dock at the hospital, waiting because they know Tupac's going to die, but Tupac's alive. And so they wheel his body quickly out and they rush it over. They give a quick autopsy. They don't go through any of the normal steps that they do in an autopsy. And then they rush it off to the crematorium. And it's likely that the ashes that were given to Macaulay to take back to LA were not even Tupac's. Because were they really going to, hand any DNA off to anybody? Probably not. And how tough would it be to substitute somebody's ashes? So, this stuff is all pre-planned. It looks like a very sophisticated hit. The Tupac hit and the Biggie hits are both very sophisticated. And the Bobby Finch hit. Both. All 3 of these are super sophisticated. And it's the same circle of people. If we listen to Suge, and if you solve one, you solve them both. I say if you solve one, you solve all 3. Because Bobby Finch also deserves. Bobby Finch was a legend in Compton. And apparently there was a Compton PD that was there, 2 Compton PDs, and they were shaking down drug dealers and Southside Crips. And this might lead to why there was such a feud with the Compton Southside Crips. And, they told me in the hood that it was Reggie Wright Jr. I don't know whether or not it was because I wasn't there. But Bobby Finch stood up, and he was somebody who actually would spar with heavyweight champions and hold his own. And Bobby Finch stood up and said, hey, you wouldn't be shit without that gun and badge. And that person, same age as Bobby Finch, and Reggie Wright and Bobby Finch are the same age. They went to different high schools, but they knew each other. And they square off. And one punch, that cop goes to sleep on the very spot that Bobby Finch was murdered on.
Payback.
Yeah.
And how many of it's funny you mentioned those 3 deaths, but how many of the security guards for Reggie Wright, you got Michael Moore, Frank Alexander, and then, like you said, all the other gangbangers, the gang members from the Crips and the Bloods, they were all dead, including, the guy they originally blamed the whole murder on. I mean, he's dead too. Like, everybody got killed. Everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Like, most of these witnesses are dead now. Like,
there's 45, 50
like Frank Alexander and what is it?
There's 45 or 50 deaths associated with all this. I mean,
like, how did Michael Moore even die? The Michael Moore you said 2 Michael Moores, and some people were asking if it was Michael Moore, the film director. No, these are not Michael Moore, the film director.
There's
but Michael Moore, the security guard. How did he die?
He died of an overdose, and nobody knows. Nobody knows how that happened. Nobody knows how that happened. He dies of an overdose. The other Michael Moore that I mentioned was the police chief at LAPD. So these 2 are, and it's a common name. And there's a film director named Michael Moore, and there's probably 1,000 other Michael Moores.
Exactly.
But anyway, a lot of deaths. Vince Buchanan is one death. You have Buntry, you have
Bundry,
Heron.
yeah.
You know, those guys all died. You got, I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Yeah, there's 45, 50 deaths that are associated with this stuff. And, you know, I mean, it's dangerous being affiliated with this stuff. But, you know, Compton, and I've probably been to Compton 2,000 times. You know, I've hung out. I probably met 2,000 different people in Compton. I worked on a bunch of campaigns down there. I shot video for them, did their commercials, wrote articles, did newspapers down there. So, I mean, I really know a lot of people in Compton. I know somebody who hung out with David Mack, and, you know, he was like the kid everybody picked on. And so he's from his class. And, you know, the reason he became the fastest runner is because the kids all picked on him and they chased him.
Let it run.
And that's how he became such an incredible runner. And
Yeah.
you know what? I don't think anybody's chasing him now. I think he's a pretty dangerous person. And, you know, yeah, Gaddafi's dead. That's another one.
Yeah,
I mean, it
Gaddafi.
just goes
There's
on
so
and
many
on
of
and
them.
on. Yeah. And if you knew something, you're going to get dead. And if, you know, and if you were going to be Suge's muscle when he got out of prison, you're going to get dead. I mean, you know, they weren't going to allow Suge to have muscle again. They were never going to make that happen again. So, yeah. Crazy.
Natalie's got a question. I think you kind of answered it earlier, but you still keep in touch with Suge Knight? And if so, will Suge ever write a book?
Well, I have not spoken to Suge in quite some time. And, you know, I would just say this. Suge is Suge. I mean, what are you going to say, right? I think Suge, Reggie calls him a liar. I think Suge is always looking at what the angle is. And so if there's money involved, like if Jimmy would give him $1 million, he'd probably write something and talking about how Jimmy's the greatest. And, you know, so will he actually ever come out and say, I mean, he recently just said he would, whoever called him to be a witness was going to get tanked in their case. You know, that's not somebody that you really think is going to come out and tell the truth. But I do believe that Suge, when he was talking to me originally, because, you know, I hit him up and I said, hey, Russell Poole wanted to apologize to you, because don't forget him, Biggie and Tupac. Russell Poole said that Suge was behind the Tupac and the Biggie murder. And Russell came to realize that Suge Knight was sitting next to Tupac and probably not behind that murder. And then Russell and I interviewed somebody who was in jail with Suge Knight at the time that he was at LA County, at the time the Biggie thing happened. And he was shackled hand and foot. And so the odds that Suge Knight from behind bars, shackled hand and foot, was able to orchestrate the Biggie hit, which is what he was accused of, is impossible to prove. You would never get a conviction. So if you're not going to get a conviction, Russell figured, you know what, let's reach out to the attorneys and let's see if we can't get Suge to cooperate, which he was going to cooperate with us back then. And so when I finally get to talk to him and I tell him Russell wanted to apologize to him in person, but at least I get to finally apologize to Suge, I think he came back with telling me the truth. You know, they knew what was going on behind that stuff. And, you know, Perez was all involved. Perez and them was all involved, and they tried to kill me too. And Perez and Reggie was friends, and Perez and Reggie and Sharitha was great friends, and all three of those together tried to plot. I think that's what happened, and I think we've learned that that's what happened. So, yeah.
We have a lot of conspiracy theorists in the chat. Some are saying Tupac's still alive. He's a Keel in Jurassic Park. We've heard that. But here's one. This is a good one. I just forgot to bring it up. R.I. God says it was a massive psyop.
And
Carlin is in on it as well. What do you think about that? Are you CIA too, Michael?
I just think that's funny. I've never knowingly worked for the CIA. And, you know, here's the crazy thing. I think, you know, I was a Mormon missionary and I got kicked out of the Mormons. And that's why I knew the Osmonds and all that stuff. But anyway,
You knew
While
Donnie and Marie. That's
I
amazing.
did. Yeah, I knew Donnie Marie. I knew them all. And I worked for Jimmy at Osmond Studios. But anyway, when I was on my mission, I was put with a dude whose father was the head of Stanford Research Institute. And he came out and he met with me. And you know what? This guy did not like Hollywood Mike. I was too Hollywood for them.
You were
And
too
so,
Hollywood for the
well,
CIA.
what were they looking for? They were looking for a Mormon missionary type.
That's right.
And
That's who
you know
they.
what?
That's who they pick a lot.
That's who
Actually,
they
CIA.
pick. Yeah. But I wasn't like your typical Mormon missionary. I was like,
You were too worldly.
I
You were
was
minding
too
your
early.
own.
I grew up in
Yeah.
Hollywood, and you know
Yeah.
what? And
You knew all the
they
games.
they couldn't control me. So I think, in my file was put, hey, this dude does not play well with others.
They passed
And
over you.
that was the end of it. And so, yeah, I'm not a psyop. And
I get it too. I tried. I took a test for the Foreign Service at one point.
Oh, well, there you go. That'll get you on a list.
I think I got recruited too, but I think they
Yeah.
didn't want me.
Oh yeah,
Funny.
I don't think.
But
they
I
wanted
get
me.
called. Now they call me I also walk dogs part time. Like that's one of the
Okay.
things I do for money. I love it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
fun. But I say it like I'm the Vatican assassin dog walker.
There you go.
CIA Vatican assassin
There
dog
you go.
walker.
Yeah.
I'm doing hits while I'm walking, while I'm picking up the poo. Come on, people. It's
Well, I
funny,
will
huh?
say, RIGOD, I will say, I believe that it is a CIA op for sure. But I believe that what you're seeing as the CIA op is this right here. And when
The
you see
cover-up.
Michael Burko, who goes to work, LAPD never hires a chief from
Right.
outside. They always promote from within. And the one time they bring somebody in, it's a fixer from the outside.
Yeah, it's a
And-
cover up.
Yeah,
The
it's a cover-up.
CIA is covering it up. They
Yeah.
they want to protect their assets and their ops, and they don't want to
Sources
even be
and
embarrassed.
methods.
Yeah.
We never hear about sources and methods. So, that's what this is. And that's why we're probably never going to see. And look, we can see all the malfeasance that's gone on in the past decade. How many people have actually gone to prison? I mean, almost none of them. And how many are going to go to prison? If you're
None.
waiting for people to go to prison, they're just not going to go to prison. And, not to get too religious on you or whatever, but if you look at Revelation, right, they talk about it. Okay, well, there's all these people and they're crying to God for justice. And he says, no, that's just not going to happen. And so, we're not going to expect justice, right, in this life. That's not going to happen. And
Maybe the afterlife. Do you think Reggie Wright Jr. is watching tonight?
Oh, I'm sure. Why wouldn't he be?
Hi, Reggie. Hi, Reggie.
Okay.
Reggie the rat. I do want to we're at 2 minutes and 22 minutes. I do want you to give you a final kind of statement on what you think is going to happen going forward here. You kind of have already, or anything else we didn't get to talk about tonight. But I want to play this little clip about Reggie, actually.
Sure.
This is like from Del Rey. Yeah, I think you know who Del Rey is.
Of course.
He's got a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you like Del Rey? I watch
do.
some of these.
I mean,
Choke
you know
No
what?
Joke is another one. Yeah.
I love all these guys because you know
Yeah.
what? The more that they put out there, the more we're getting closer and closer to the truth. And I think you and I are just about one thing, and that's the truth. Because,
That's it.
in the end, what else do we have? It's the
Wanna find
truth.
out what's going on. I mean, Tupac was special. He's
Yeah.
one of a kind.
And Del Rey's been doing some good work.
Yeah. So here we go. This is I'm going to play just a little bit of this because it has Reggie in it. So we'll just play
Ladies
this for
and
a second and
gentlemen.
see what you think, Michael.
There's been a lot of lies told involving the Tupac situation. But I found some information that I thought was one of the most egregious lies. Until this day, we still don't know the truth behind it. But what we do know is that Reggie Wright Jr. lied. So if Keefe D is alleging that Reggie Wright Jr. was the orchestrator, what we're about to discuss, or what I'm about to show you, because I know a lot of you people have not seen it, and some of you have, but this is very important. This was a deposition in regards to the 40 caliber Glock that was found on Fatal Hussein when they were going into the House of Blues. But this is the deposition, and Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. was deposed. Let's get right into it. Check it out. Kim Valentine is the person doing the deposition. Kim says, "Do you know an individual by the name of Kevin Hackey?" Reggie, yes. Pay attention, y'all. Kim Valentine and Kevin Hackey, at one point in time, as I understood, was a police officer. Reggie Wright Jr., Compton Unified School Police, as I recall. Yes, Kim Valentine. And was he ever an employee at Right Way Protective Services? Reggie Wright Jr. Yes, he was. Kim Valentine. Do you recall approximately his dates of employment with Right Way Protective Services? Reggie Wright Jr. Let me see. Maybe August, September of 1995. Kim Valentine. Do you ever recall an occasion where any of your Right Way Protective Services employees provided you with a weapon that came from a police department? Listen to Reggie Wright Jr. I heard that allegation. He's calling it an allegation, right? I heard that allegation. First, here's the allegation word, right? I heard that allegation before somewhere. I don't remember where. I know the incident you are speaking of, but the gun was never given back to me. Okay? The gun was never given back to him. Listen. Kim Valentine. So you were never provided with a weapon by any of your employees that, to your knowledge, came from a police department? Reggie Wright Jr. No. Kim Valentine. And Kevin Hackey never provided you with a weapon that was allegedly from a police department? Reggie Wright Jr. That's correct. You know what? That's not correct. See, he was ready to go into the lie, but he doesn't know what Kim Valentine knows or what other evidence they have. So he was ready to go into the lie, but he still lied, even though he tried to come back. Watch this, y'all. Reggie Wright said, that's correct. Oh, you know what? That's not correct. Kim Valentine. Okay. So she's like, okay, well, tell me what it is. Now, watch this great stutter move, and I want you to pay attention. Reggie Wright Jr. That's not correct. Kevin did give me a gun that was taken from what it was. Yeah, it was an incident where a gun was taken from. We had a concert or something. It was taken off of. It was taken from one of the artists that was with us, and one of the other security guys took and held the gun, and somehow I think he and Kevin hooked up, and he gave the gun back to Kevin Hackey. I remember me and Kevin meeting about it, and Kevin telling me he was going to give me the gun. I don't ever remember receiving the gun back from him. I remember the incident, but I don't remember if I got the gun or what happened to the gun. Listen, follow along now. Kim Valentine says, did you ever send Kevin Hackey to get the gun? Reggie Wright Jr. I told Kevin Hackey to go meet the guy, right? I think it was a Santa Monica LAPD cop. I don't know. I don't remember too much about it. Kevin probably gave it back to the guy that he took it from. I don't know. Did y'all hear that? He's saying that Kevin, first he said he didn't know. He said, I think he met with the guy. And then Kim Valentine comes in and she says, did you ever send Kevin Hackey to get the gun? Now he's saying, I told Kevin Hackey to go meet with the guy. I think it was a Santa Monica LAPD cop, right? Because they were about to lock up Fatal Hussein that night, right? For whatever reason, I don't know why he didn't get locked up or whatever. But listen, Kim Valentine, do you know who he took it from? Meaning the gun. Reggie, it was either Tupac or one of his boys. Kim Valentine, do you know what type of gun, that was taken, right? Reggie Wright Jr. It was a 40 caliber Glock. Now hold on, a 40 caliber, right? Listen, Reggie said earlier he didn't know about the gun. He didn't know about the gun because he was never given the gun. But when she goes in to ask him, well, do you know what kind of gun it was? Now he all of a sudden knows it was a 40 caliber Glock. Remember, he said earlier he knew nothing about the gun. He don't know if he got it back or not, but he actually knows what kind of gun that he didn't get back. Kim Valentine goes on, listen. Why did you tell Kevin to go get this gun from the police officer, Reggie Wright Jr.? I was going to give the gun back to the owner of it, right? Now he was the gun that he didn't get back. You gonna see that. Now he told Kevin Hackey to go get the gun that he didn't know about, the gun he didn't know about, and he just didn't remember. But now he was gonna give it back to the owner, Kim Valentine. Who was the owner of it? Reggie Wright Jr. it was somebody we were supplying security for. One of the guys, it was one of Tupac's boys, somebody that was with Tupac. I don't know which one it was. Check it out now. Kim Valentine, was there ever an occasion where any of your police officers ever provided you with any other weapon other than the one we were just discussing, right? Let me do that again. Kim Valentine, was there ever any occasion where any of your police officers ever provided you with any other weapon other than the one we were just discussing? Reggie Wright Jr. No, Kim Valentine. So you ultimately never got the gun from Kevin Hackey. Reggie Wright Jr. I don't remember that. Y'all hear that? I don't remember that, right? Because I don't know what I did with the gun if I got it, right? Come on, y'all. This guy, you got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. She asked Reggie, Kim Valentine, so you ultimately never got the gun from Kevin Hackey. Reggie Wright Jr. says, I don't remember that because I don't know what I did with the gun if I got it. But I do remember some discussion about that now. I was wondering what the heck you were talking about. So now he act like he didn't know, right? And now he says he don't even remember. When at first he said he was going to give the gun back to the owner. And when she asked him, so you ultimately never got the gun back from Kevin Hackey, right? Listen. Oh man, this is crazy. This is crazy. Look, let's look once again. What did he say earlier? Right? Reggie Wright Jr. He said, okay, oh, that's not correct. Kevin did give me a gun that was taken from. Hold on. Didn't he say he was given the gun? After once he
let's get forward a little bit.
We're talking about, he knew what she was talking about the whole time. So,
and
this is Chris Black.
This is in the incident of Officer Brian Watt, who was a Long Beach cop, and he was shot with this gun. And that's why this became an issue. And this was he wasn't killed, but he did file suit against the city of Compton. And so this is actually the predicate to shut down the corrupt Compton PD, because the feds come in and they tap the mayor on the shoulder and they say, hey, either you're stupid or you're in on it. He says, I'm stupid. And this is what leads to the Compton PD being disbanded. So single-handedly, Reggie was the one that caused that to happen. And there was a lawsuit that was filed. There was a settlement that was made. And Reggie, and if you look at this, the first lie was saying Kevin Hackey was, he only worked for Right Way 95. Well, Kevin Hackey was originally Tupac's bodyguard when he first came back, and he worked with him all the way through the incident that happened with Tupac, and then after Tupac, even after Reggie finds out that Hackey's working for the feds. And so the first lie was told in the very first part of what Del Rey put out.
Yeah, this is wild.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're dealing with somebody who can bob and weave with the truth. And that's not who we are. And, the Compton PD gets shut down, and it's a direct result. And then Reggie finances the campaign of Eric Paradin, who was his patrol partner, against Omar Bradley. And he uses death row money to get Eric Paradin into the police. And from the time Suge goes to prison, Omar Bradley says there is absolutely no difference between the way Death Row Records runs and the Compton PD runs. They run as one and the same entity.
Organization.
Yeah.
It's funny because people were saying Discretion TV. That's another channel. It's actually, this one is Straight Game TV.
Yeah, Straight Game.
So,
yeah.
I might have screwed it up myself, just so people know. Delray Richardson, you want to follow him. Straight Game TV. Some people don't like him. Some people are in here saying that he's with Reggie. I don't think so.
I don't see that. No.
Yeah, I think Delray's a straight shooter.
Yeah, I think so.
I think Delray tries to really look at things. He got sued by Reggie Wright, and he won. Remember that?
Yeah.
Reggie Wright sued him. This is another video. This is the one I actually wanted to play. That one was a good one anyways, but this was the one. I'm going to skip around a little bit on this one, but this has Reggie directly. I just want to show Reggie on the screen so people can see him that don't know Reggie.
Testified in front of the Keefe D grand jury. The question that everybody wants to know is, how did Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. know that Russell Poole was right about this and right about this? Let's get into some of this straight game.
Life is like cards. It's not what you dealt, but
Let me just forward this up. This is his intro. Here we go.
Remember when Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. made the video saying that the Nextel radios that they had didn't have the walkie-talkie feature, and the Nextel radios wasn't able to do what Michael Moore said it could do when he heard the got him over the radio? Listen to him say it.
And what he claimed to happen, the Nextel radios wasn't even able to do at the particular time.
While I was working at 662, I heard something over the Nextels that we all carry for security, and what I heard was "got him."
But
basically what you just saw is Reggie Wright Jr. denying it. Michael Moore, the security guard who's now dead, telling his truth.
Ironically, and interestingly enough, when Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. testified for the grand jury, he said that the Nextel radios had the walkie-talkie feature as well as a phone radio, when he's saying that Frank Alexander didn't contact him. Look. Boom. Got him again. This guy is a compulsive liar. He cannot be trusted. His credibility is zero. He lied. This is the truth right here. These are the facts. He went in front of the grand jury and stated something that he had adamantly denied over the last 27 some odd years. Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy Delray Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, Straight Game TV. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time. Do me a favor and hit the thumbs up button notification. Also subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And like I always say, if you want to be one of the first people notified when I drop some of this straight game, please do me a favor and click on what appears to be that little bell notification right below this video. I'm going to get right into it. Ladies and gentlemen, why would Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. testify in the Keefe D grand jury, or in front of the Keefe D grand jury, when he's clearly said over the years that he was at Club 662? In the grand jury, when Reggie the Rat Wright Jr., like I said, hence the reason why I call him a rat, you see what he likes to do. He likes to testify and signify and meddle and things that have nothing to do with him from that perspective, or that he has no knowledge of. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. So I just got a glimpse of the grand jury testimony in regards to the Keefe D situation and where the charges were brought up, right? Over the years, we've heard Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. Deny that he was anywhere in the vicinity.
I'm going to stop it there. I thought I had the actual video. Funny. Delray puts out a lot of videos. It's hard to keep track. I thought I had the video where Reggie was speaking on TV as well, because he just did another News Nation hit.
Oh, yeah.
But do you want to say anything about this, the gun, or anything that Delray's talking about in terms of Reggie Wright Jr.?
Well, I mean, there's some craziness with all this stuff too, right? Don't forget that Reggie Wright Jr. accompanies everybody up to their interviews with the Las Vegas Metro Police, and he gets to sit in on their interviews. Now, can you imagine the suspect in the Tupac murder gets to accompany the witnesses and listen into what they say to the police? I mean, that's insane. That's insane. And he drives them to their interviews with the Las Vegas sheriffs. Now, why would the sheriffs allow that? because somehow Reggie had some kind of vig with the sheriffs. And that's just the reality. Is anything going to happen to Reggie? It probably already has. I mean, he's like wheelchair bound or whatever. So we don't really know what happened there, but this clearly is somebody who's knee deep or neck deep in all this stuff. And even Suge now is starting to know and understand exactly what happened to him. And it was a toppling of Death Row Records. And Reggie was knee deep in it with Rafael Perez, David Mack, Kevin Gaines, Sharitha Knight, and Suge has said it, you know. So, yeah. And of course, liars going to lie. They don't want to ever get prosecuted for the crimes they've committed. But I would just say this. Look, Reggie, you are no doubt listening to us tonight. And this is your opportunity to come clean. It's your opportunity to repent of all the sins that you have done. It's your time. And if you want to repent, you can come on this show. You can do whatever you want. Come on my show. I'm sure Del Rey will take you on his show. Choke will take you on his show. And we can all listen to you telling what your sins are and asking for God's forgiveness for all this mayhem that you've been a part of. And tell us all straight up before it's over, because your time is coming, my time is coming, all of our time is coming, and we want to be right with God when we exit this planet. And Reggie, this is your time to repent, and you can do it up there on that witness stand. Tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and blow this whole case wide open with the truth. Tell us all the truth.
Totally. It's time. I mean, America deserves to know the truth, on this. This is such a big story. The
It
truth
is a
needs to
big
be
story.
known,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess before we let you go tonight, any final thoughts? And where should people? Because a lot of people are asking about the movie that I played a little intro of the trailer. Where can they watch that? That's on YouTube, right?
Yeah, it's out there. I mean, it's on numerous platforms. They can watch Larger Than Life, the Suge Knight story on my platform. That's a documentary about Suge Knight too. They can, read Tupac 187. They can read Chaos Merchants. They can go to my channel. I've got hundreds of videos up on my channel. I talk about Tupac being murdered in the hospital. I get into the weeds on some of this stuff. I got new stuff that nobody's ever seen before that I'm going to release tomorrow, or not tomorrow. Wednesday is the anniversary of Russell Poole's death, and I'm working on something that I think will be good for that show. And it's really talking about this cover up. And Russell was hitting the wall at LAPD. He didn't realize Bernard Parks, who was telling him to stand down, had hand recruited all of these people onto the police force. He didn't realize that these were Bernard Parks handpicked people. He didn't realize that there was this unholy alliance with the Compton PD, and that Bernard Parks was trying to get them not to shut down the Compton PD. He didn't know any of these things. These are all things that I've learned after. But Russell did get it right before he died. Russell did want to apologize to Suge. He did apologize through the attorneys. I actually had lunch with Tom Mesereau after Russell passed, and he expressed his regrets, that Russell had passed and the circumstances. And then shortly after that, Tom Mesereau was pushed out of the case as Suge's lawyer because the prosecution and the sheriffs and the judge didn't really want Tom Mesereau in their courtroom. So, this stuff all comes full circle, right? And
yeah, thank God you're still here speaking for Russell too. Like, because Russell was a straight shooter, a good cop, and he wanted the truth out. And you're kind of the one still, carrying his work, what he
Well,
was all about. And
he was a dear friend. I mean, I was at his funeral, and You know, there were prosecutors in his funeral. There were LAPD cops there. His family was there. And the one unifying thing that they all said at his funeral was that Russell Poole had integrity with a capital I. And Russell Poole, you know, you could see when you see anything about Russell Poole that it's always about the truth. And the one thing he would do whenever he nabbed a suspect, and he had him, he would go into the room with the suspect and he would turn off the recorders. He'd say, look, this is just you and me talking. I got you. And this is how I got you. This is how you're going to go down. But I want you to know it wasn't personal. It was you and me. And I never had to lie. I didn't have to coerce you into testifying. I didn't have to put you in some kind of a trick box. I did everything as an honest and a righteous investigation on you. And I got you fair and square. And I just want to shake your hand and I want to know that we're cool. And they would say, yes, I know you got me. And that was it. That wasn't recorded. He could have recorded it. He could have been shady Greg Kading and recorded it. Oh, that's a confession. No, he didn't do that. He had integrity with a capital I. So every single one of his investigations were a righteous investigation. And if you look at Chaos Merchants, every single footnote is a fact. And it's footnoted where it came from. So when you look at it, and that was the one thing, man, they do not want to talk about Chaos Merchants.
No, they
Because
don't. Nobody wants to talk.
Nobody wants to talk about that book because Russell insisted that every single fact be footnoted so that we knew where it came from. And that work, I completed it 24 hours after Russell died. I just cleaned it up a little bit, and that was released posthumously. And I released it 24 hours after Russell died. And I put out a press release so that it would be time and date stamped. And there's PDFs out there that you can find for free. You don't have to pay for it if you don't want to. It's never been about making money. It's always just been about getting Russell's truth out there. And like I said at the beginning of this, nobody cares what Michael Carlin thinks, but they care what Russell Poole thinks.
I do. I care what you're doing. You do great work, Michael. And we promoted your YouTube tonight.
No, I
and
appreciate
you've got a lot
that.
of people watching on your channel right now, which is awesome. I hope people subscribe to you if they're new to it. We also posted your website.
I appreciate it.
People can check it all out. The book, you can still get Chaos Merchants. It's like, it's not very expensive on Amazon, people. Like you get it for a easy, people should get that book, really.
Yeah.
And like when we let you go tonight, like you have so many videos on your channel as well.
Yeah.
And I know that you tell people, this is what I like about you too. You tell the YouTubers, play my stuff on your shows. Don't worry about the copyright.
No.
Considering that, I figured I would play something on the way out so people can get an idea of what you're posting on your YouTube channel, and hopefully people go subscribe to it. Which one do you think we should play on the way out? Like, is there a certain, because you've got some new ones here.
Any of the recent stuff, why don't you play just the ending of it? Maybe the last 5 minutes or something.
Suge Knight speaks about Tupac murder?
Yeah, I mean, that'd be good. And then let me just tell you, my channel has been under siege by Greg Kading specifically. And he's tried to get me community guidelines stricken. He's tried to do copyright strikes on me. And the one thing he knows is that I work with an attorney pretty closely. We took a case all the way to the California Supreme Court, and we beat the attorney that was representing the city of LA in the Biggie Smalls civil case. So I felt good about that. So he knows that I love to litigate. And so every time I call him on it, he's not going to go all the way to court with me. But literally, there was a time where my channel was just under siege. And that's why I tell everybody, this channel, my channel, is likely to be shut down anytime. And that's why I say, take it, copy it, put it out on your own channels, cut it up any way you want to cut it up. I don't care about that. I care about the truth. Let's get the truth out there. So if you play like the last 5 minutes of anything, it's got, what I've done is I've assembled clips of people talking. And a lot of these are like Suge Knight talking. And Sharitha night. There was a time where there was a dude named Tanik, and he did one amazing thing. He called up Reggie Wright and he said, "Hey, there's a $10,000 check, and it's going to come out in this movie and the new book on Labyrinth or whatever." And Reggie calls over and talks to Sharitha with him on the phone, and they get to listen in, and he records it. And it's Sharitha talking about, they were being paid cash by Snoop. There's no $10,000 check. We would always do it for $9,900 if you want to do it right. And it's a hysterical conversation, and some of that's cut in there because every single one of these drips just gives us a little bit more truth. And so I've been just playing with all this to just kind of cut it up. We had Reggie talk about, he gave us a master class in how to buy off a witness. And sometimes you get caught and sometimes you don't. I mean, these are the kind of things Reggie talks about. And it's like the dumbest things you could ever say. And then at the beginning of one of his shows, he came on and he said, "Hey, John, we got a lot to cover up, y'all." And John was like,
unbelievable. I mean,
"Cover
he's
up?"
so cocky that you have to think he has protection. I mean, that's the thing. He's
Well,
protected, like you
come on,
said. He's got
come on.
protection.
There are mandatory minimums for federal crimes, and he didn't do the mandatory minimums.
There
That
you
tells
go.
you everything you need to know.
He's federally protected. That's what I think too.
He's
That's what everyone
federally
thinks.
protected. And we don't know what's going to happen. We're $40 trillion in debt. We don't know what's going to go on. But we know this: it's never going to stay the same. We got big changes coming, whatever they are. We're going to be spoon-fed those changes because they're never going to tell us ahead of time what's going to happen. But we just know big changes are coming.
Oh, they certainly are right now. I mean,
Yeah,
the
they
real
just-
estate market's going to crash right now.
Oh, yeah,
We can
it's
see
crashing.
that happening.
Yeah, it's
$40 trillion
crashing.
in debt.
Yeah.
I sold all my tech stocks. I'm buying oil companies.
But you know what? And that's probably not a bad move because, you look around, all this shit that we got going on, it all functions on oil, all of it. So that's probably a really good move for you to make.
Oh, yeah.
But so, are they really going to arrest people? I mean, they don't seem to. It seems like,
This is a show trial.
Oh,
This seems like a show trial.
We
Right?
find out about James Comey, and we find out about Robert Mueller, and he sold the uranium to the Russians, and none of that ever matters. Nothing ever happens to any of them. Bill Clinton. I mean, just go back. Bush.
I mean, even look at Trump's pardon. Who'd he pardon from the throat crew?
Oh yeah. Well,
Harry O.
They came to me and they asked me about that because I was working on a congressional campaign at that time. And they said, "What do you think about this Harry O?" And I had been talking to Harry O. I talked to him a few times while he was in prison. Supposed to send me all these never did anything. But I didn't really care about that. I said, well, they kind of did him dirty because he got out of his state sentence, which was supposed to run concurrently, and they didn't. They made it sequentially. And so they gave him a federal stint. And I said, they kind of did him dirty. And so I don't know that I swayed them at all when they came and talked to me about it, but you never know. I mean, I was with one of the Pyru guys, and we both talked about it to the Trump people and said, hey, we never want to see him in prison, but we didn't know he was going to come out and run death row.
Yeah.
You can't make this stuff up.
No, you can't. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then Snoop, yeah,
And
the
Snoop
whole
is
thing.
back.
And then Daz Dillinger going after. I mean, just everything every day just backs up what you've uncovered.
Oh, yeah.
That's all I'm seeing. It's like everything that you reported just continues to get confirmed as more time goes on. And it's
I
just
actually
obvious
like
this is
Daz
a money
Dillinger.
grab.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and he's talented. And, he and DJ Quick, there wouldn't be a Tupac without DJ Quick.
Exactly.
And without Daz Dillinger, without Johnny J. I mean, that's like the trifecta.
All three of those guys.
All three of those
did
guys.
the work.
And even Warren G. I mean, Warren G, 2 seminal songs in an afternoon. Shout out to all 4 of those guys because they made Tupac who he is. But make no mistake about it, Tupac showed up with Warren G, and it was like, okay, 5 minutes, let me just write down. So, okay, I'm ready. Let's go record. What do you mean you're ready?
Yeah, he had the work ethic. Tupac had the work ethic.
and the
A
talent.
lot of people don't have the work ethic. That's
And
the
there's
issue.
never going to be another Tupac. There's never going to be anybody like him, and that's why, true fans, I really want them to have closure in this Tupac murder, because even though we're not going to get a conviction, we know what happened. We know that he was a victim of the system, and make no mistake about it, he was a baby panther. He was never going to be quiet, and they just said, "Hey, when it was time to kill him, they gave a green light because Tupac was going to be trouble." Can you imagine Tupac alive today?
Yeah,
Oh,
especially him being there too. He would know all the secrets. Like
no. Oh,
he
yeah.
knew a lot. Like he
Well,
already he was so young and he knew everything. It was
he
just
was young
amazing
and he
how
was
ahead
talking
of his
about,
time. I can't imagine what he would have been like at 50. Like he
he
would have
was
been
talking
probably
about the
president of the United
CIA.
States.
He was
Yeah,
talking about the CIA putting drugs out on the streets of
yeah,
America. I mean, he knew that shit. And that
yeah,
was breaking right when he was getting out of prison.
yeah.
I mean, he paid attention. So Tupac was going to be trouble for the establishment.
Totally.
The
He
J.
already
Edgar
was
Hoovers
trouble. Yeah.
of our time were not going to have Tupac. And, they probably don't like me either. I don't care. Should we care?
No, no.
They're not putting money in my
We're not as
pocket.
important though. We're not
No,
as
no,
important.
we're nobodies.
Yeah.
We're nobodies.
Thank God.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
we're just entertaining, letting people know what's going on. I really appreciate you being here, and we'll be watching this trial. I hope to have you back during the trial because I'd love to do more
Oh
updates
yeah,
with you as this is going on. Because we'll be watching it all week and for the next couple months, I guess it's going to be
right.
going on here.
Reach out. I'm happy to do something with you anytime.
Awesome.
Yeah.
This has been a lot of fun. It's almost 3 hours, Michael. You're amazing. You could we just scratched the surface too. Like there's so
We
much we
did
could have.
just yeah. There's a lot more. There's a lot of facets to the whole Tupac and Biggie thing, and it goes into a lot of other murders. I mean, we talked about Bobby Finch, but there's 45 others. I mean, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. I really appreciate you being here again. Definitely check out Michael's website. Make sure you subscribe to his YouTube, and I hope you have a great rest of your week, Michael. And we'll see what happens with Tupac and this whole thing this week with Dwayne Keithy Davis, Keefe D, and Reggie Wright Jr. It's just going to be interesting to see if Reggie's on the stand. That's what I'm looking forward to see if he actually is on the stand. I can't imagine what he's going to say.
No, I can't either. It's gonna be entertaining. Get your popcorn.
Let's hope so. Let's hope at least we get that. At least we get some entertainment out of this, hopefully, because it's a lot of heartbreak too when you look at it. The fact
It is
that
a
they
lot of
took
heartbreak for sure.
Tupac so young.
Yeah.
And so many others. But again, I want to thank you so much, Michael, and we'll talk very soon.
All right. Sounds good, brother. I'm gonna hit mute, right? You're gonna play something else.
Yes, I'm gonna remove you, and you can watch it in the green room if you'd like as well. So very much appreciate you. Have a great night.
All right. And you. Bye.
It's Michael Carlin, author, movie maker, music guy. I mean, he's worked with Bon Jovi. He worked with Prince. He's been around, people. Pretty cool to have him on the show. I really appreciate him. And I've been a fan of his for a long time. And if you haven't watched those movies, you can. The one I really recommend, the movie, if you want to just check it out, and you can do a search on YouTube. There's a version that you have to actually pay for on YouTube. There's also some like pirated copies that you can watch for free. The movie is called Tupac Assassination. Let me say that again. Tupac Assassination, Battle for Compton. You do a search, you'll find it. Also, he's got his website. Check out his website. We posted that in the chat a couple times tonight. And also, he's got Michael Douglas Carlin, the YouTube channel. And again, we're going to close out. We're just going to play one of his videos to close it out so you get a taste of it. And you know what? I'll answer a couple questions too. There were a couple comments earlier. Some people were actually criticizing Del Rey because he's changed his mind a few times. I don't know. I kind of like that, honestly, folks, because sometimes people get so caught up in one thing and they don't change their opinion with new information. I feel like Del Rey is a straight shooter. That's why I kind of like him, and I don't always agree with him, But I like the fact that if he finds new information, he's going to change his viewpoint. Some people don't like that. They think it's flip-flopping or whatever. And it's like, you know what? Sometimes you get more info and your mind might change. Your opinion might change. And that's what I actually like about Del Rey, that he's open. He's not just caught up in a narrative. So I just want to say that before I leave, because I did see some pushback on it. I like Del Rey. Which I think we're going to play this one because I like this one. Suge Knight speaks about Tupac murder. Do I have this one up? No, I had it up. Let me bring it up anyways. Take me a second here. I must have dropped it. This is a long one. I'm trying to think. He said listen towards the end. I want to get to the part where. Hold on one second here. I just want to make sure that we have. I just want to make sure that we're not missing the part that I want to hear, actually. All right, we do. We have it up. All right, cool. It's going to take me a second to get this on the screen. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. Should have had it set up earlier. I had a lot of links set up tonight. You know me, I'm not the most technical guy, but I did pretty good tonight. I only muted myself once tonight.
And he said, I don't care if Tupac died, I don't care if Biggie gotta die, and I don't care if Suge gotta go to prison for the rest of his life.
Now, getting back to Russell was following in the footsteps of his dad, and he was able to work through the LAPD and have all the things that had to be done within the LAPD. He certainly knew the streets very well, and circumstances in his case were far more tragic because he was killed in the line of duty.
Hold your head on repeat. Listen to the beat again and again in my playpen till Tupac appeared to me. Finally I see. How do we keep the music playing with these devils betraying? Rap games, ghost, hocus pocus flows, exposing my foes and their John Does. Mad respect, Russell Poole detect, murders checked. Now rest your head, bless the dead while the message spreads. Machiavelli said, my killers have not yet bled.
They got to be sorry for what they did.
Like I said, I had two of the toughest guys for him, and Reggie pulled them off of me. And after it happened, I told him to send 5 guys from the club to there, and they never sent nobody.
Suge was set up.
I'm like, cuz, you going to Vegas? You going to Vegas, cuz? They finna try to do something to me.
I mean, murder is pretty simple. The first person you go after is the spouse.
Perez and them was all involved. They were trying to kill me too, but see, because Perez and Reg was good friends, and Perez and Sarita and Reg is great friends, and so all those three together was trying to plot.
Why would I want a paper trail when I never brought him around nowhere? So if I'm gonna hide him in secret, you think I'm gonna let somebody catch a paper trail? It was paid cash by Snoop.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
It was a murder for hire hit.
If it was an actual shooting in Vegas, it's on camera in Vegas.
There's witnesses that said they gave no sex to kill me. So I knew there was cameras everywhere in Vegas because I went to UNLV.
All of the corners in Vegas was equipped with cameras.
Those guys, if you go back and watch the film, they was already stalking Pac, watching him. So that just tipped the iceberg when something happened. But there was a plan already to do something to him.
How come Reggie is Suge's bodyguard and he wasn't with Suge?
We went to Las Vegas Metro in 97. After Biggie was killed, I think there's got to be a connection between the two. The politicians said they don't want to solve it, so they told the investigators, put it up on the shelf. I'm quite sure they saw the first one, they saw the second one, because it's the same circle of people.
You got a lot to cover up, y'all.
Freudian slip.
You got a lot to cover up. same guy that told them, Orlando Anderson, told them that Biggie got killed by the Southside Crips.
Technically, nobody knew about the whole thing.
No, let me just say that.
No, it wasn't the discrepancy. The discrepancy is people say I called names. I didn't call names. I didn't say it was Orlando, Keefe, and all of them.
I had gotten all kind of intelligence from my informants an hour after the shooting went down. He called me and started telling me, hey, man, you know, there was Orlando and them behind this. They got in a fight because they saw saw Orlando and all that. He says, but it's them.
I didn't know about the beatdown until a couple of days later.
Trickery, witchery, foolery, flop, plot to take out Suge and Pac. Traffic stop starts the clock. Collusion of industry, street and cop.
LA had tricked Vegas to have their police and their people out there during that time. Some gang initiative or whatever.
Filmmaker takes one last shot. 60 seconds after, no more laughter. Half dead whips out Fatal's clock. Pop, pop, pop. Pop, pop, pop. Quite the head turner. They's dad came over Nate's burner. Got him on Porky Squawker. Surviving a real shocker. Fat ass said, we got a lot to cover up, y'all. And that's what's up. Stripped the straps, unloaded gats. Buntry shot back. 3 men in the caddy. Just smoked a fatty. But it wasn't Sugar Daddy.
Supposedly there's a hit on Suge.
Wounds are life-threatening, but serious, not in critical condition at this time. And the person, as you are already aware, who was the passenger in this vehicle is the known rap performer by the name of Tupac Shakur.
All the traffic lights, all the cameras, there's no way possible anybody should got away with that.
With Tupac, I still got a 45 bullet inched in my skull.
We've been informed that doctors have told the family members that they expect the rap star to once again recover from his injuries.
They know who was going on behind all that stuff, you know? How much would it cost to get rid of Suge? They said, what you mean by get rid of him? He said, kill him.
They put a hit on Suge.
Reggie's dad told me that. Well, he said, Michael, if anything happened to Suge, this is what he told me. Anything happened to Suge, Reggie would run the majority of the company. Same people, same circle of people. Have nothing to do with me, you know. Read this on the paper.
Oh yeah.
And then you gonna sit here and say,
who is your biggest defender on the street,
Fuck Suge. And what Suge said. That's how I feel.
Yeah, Reggie would carry most of the burden. It's tough because they want the ownership of my company. Hey, John, you got a lot to cover up, y'all.
Doctor said Pac's on the mend.
We try to form some security detail, at least around the floor, around his room, because they had him on the first floor.
Surrounded by friends. Foes called in to make kin spin. Finish him off.
I see him in the bed, laid up, no words, no conversation. I see Jesse Jackson, his mama. His mama pulled me to the side. She make me feel like a real player, because she tell me, my baby loved you, and I love you.
He died saying, fuck Snoop Dogg.
And I don't care. She just hit me with what I needed to hear. Mm-hmm. You know, coming from my mother, because she was strong at that time. Everybody else was crying and breaking down. She was real strong. And she just held me real tight, and she just said a prayer with me.
We were pissed off. I'm like, you know, this is an assassination attempt, right? And y'all got him on the first floor near a window.
Pac shook the bed, for his life he pled.
By the time I got there, remember I was coming from LA. So by the time I got there, he had tubes in his throat, in his nose, and his mouth. So he ain't talked to me, not verbally.
Suge told me that he thought the reason why he checked himself out the hospital is because they kept trying to put him to sleep. He still probably to this day tell you if he would have let them put him to sleep, he probably wouldn't be here either.
He thought the people at the hospital were going to try to kill him?
He said, if I'd have let them motherfuckers put me to sleep, I'd be dead too.
He was conscious. He was trying to talk. He did want to talk, but he didn't actually verbalize any words. Always, you know, that's going to be one of the biggest mysteries in my life, because he was trying to tell me something. He was trying so hard. He was He was shaking the bed. He was looking at me, with his big old eyes, and I know he was trying to tell me something, but I don't know.
IVs to the vein go straight to the brain. Poison would ease his pain. It only took a drop to make his heart stop. D-O-double-G Scorsese created the distraction. Lulled protectors in action for the final transaction.
The head of gangs and homicide from the Compton PD is Reggie Wright Sr., and the head of security at Death Row is Reggie Wright Jr.
The vice president on TV talking about taking my record off the shelves. Police, every time they see me, they think I'm a cop killer.
It was an assassination attempt on Suge in Las Vegas, who would have everything to gain. Tupac and the other artists on Death Row, it turned to jealousy, and from jealousy to hate.
I don't know what kind of Nextel he had, but he had the motherfucker could go that whatever it was hitting him all the way from what was going on from Vegas.
I could have jumped out on his ass in Vegas, but it was killing me. But Snoop was like, "Hold on, don't fuck this up."
They was like, we could hear the shit, and then he started getting calls and shit, and they was telling him that Tupac got shot.
He the only one knows the reason why Tupac's dead. More than me. I was in the car with him.
And I was told it was an operation. It was a planned assassination.
How come Reggie is Suge's body?
This is amazing. What a great compilation here Michael has put together. You've heard Tupac on here. You heard Snoop Dogg. You heard Mopreem, Tupac's brother, who has often said cops did it. And you also hear exclusive interview with Suge Knight that Michael Carlin had. Again, I want to thank Michael Carlin for being here tonight, spending 3 hours with us, and also all of you in the chat, in both of our chats. Make sure you subscribe to Michael Carlin if you haven't on YouTube. I also want to thank our moderators, our mods here tonight. Thank you so much, Sheila and Vic, and I know I'm missing some others, but we have a great mod team here. I want to thank everyone who's been modding. I also want to thank the Super Chatters. Oxymoron gifted 10 Young Jerks memberships. Thank you so much. It makes it so much worthwhile when we get a donation like that. Thank you so much. The Real MLF, thank you. And Miss Alyssa, thank you. And Cam, thank you, Cam, for being here. And one of our mods, Natalie. Thank you, Natalie. Natalie Diana. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Rest in peace, Tupac, indeed. And LTL Media. Make sure you subscribe and check out his channel as well. Thank you so much, LTL Brian, for supporting and getting it going tonight for us. And Cam, again, I want to thank everyone who's been asking questions and been sticking it out tonight with us. Thank you so much. Yeah, Natalie is the best. Sheila, True Crime, Victorine. Thank you so much. I also saw Sarah here tonight. We had a lot of great moderators. I want to thank all the ladies in the chat, the ladies that mod our chat. Thank you so much. If you haven't, make sure you subscribe to the Young Jerks and Michael Carlin. Make sure you subscribe to both channels tonight, please. And tomorrow we will be live. Again, we're going to be streaming in the morning at 9 a.m. The Clancy trial. We're going to continue to stream that like we have been all last week, but we're also going to be streaming the Tupac trial tomorrow, and that starts at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 9:30 a.m. West Coast time. So we'll be streaming that as well tomorrow. Make sure you check that out. We'll be streaming the trial tomorrow on our channel. I'm looking forward to that. And again, if you want to watch that documentary, I would definitely check that out. Tupac Assassination Battle for Compton. It's on YouTube. Check it out. And I would buy that book too, Chaos Merchants. Very good book. Check it out. Okay. Gonna play a little more here on the way out.
He wanted to be Suge Knight so bad.
Where it come from? It come from because they weren't the owners of my company.
Because I feel like the same people that was trying to kill Pop was trying to kill Suge. You know what I'm saying? Them bullets was coming for everything in that car.
And if I do that, I'll be putting handcuffs on Snoop.
Police did not follow up on the most basic lead.
Just happened to have officers in the spot at the right time, were able to radio ahead.
The cops that they trying to connect to death row were never hired on death row.
He had no relationship with any police officers.
When I got shot, it was 37 cameras.
All the artists at death row was willing to come with me.
There's another rapper who wanted Suge taken out.
Yo, it was so much corruption in LAPD. If they would have solved Big case, LAPD would have been shut down.
I'm scared of no one. My pitch was to the record labels and to the company was to have police officers that could be good witnesses and for the inmates.
You crooked ass cop.
I didn't need to take from niggas. I was institutionalized a motherfucker. If I tell straight by anybody, if you want to know the real, nigga would have went to jail for a long time fucking with me.
Get everything you deserve.
Perez and Sarita and Reg is great friends, and so all those three together was trying to plot.
You always will tell you, those are Reggie people.
Suge didn't let none of my security ride with me. Because I feel like they finna try to do something to me.
Police corruption cannot exist. Cannot exist unless it is condoned and tolerated by upper police management.
Greg Kading is out. His lawyer won't let him do it.
You crooked ass cop.
Las Vegas PD is given a copy of the confession letter. They do absolutely nothing with it.
Could it be that the police department had something to do with Tupac's murder?
Coroner's hearse, idols nearby, a dear mama goodbye. Rushed autopsy, quick cremation, police celebrations. Enemies snicker, Haitian bootlicker. We the people mourn, hearts are torn, bulk of the nation, radio stations, next generations.
And that's what happened. Our lives was in jeopardy.
In the hospital there, that wasn't right.
You know, situation was, me and Pac had a little falling out a day or two before that in New York.
And you don't take no ass with them like that unless something's up. Unless the goose is cooked.
Who do you think killed Tupac?
I believe Orlando Anderson killed Tupac.
Are Sharitha and Reggie Wright Jr. telling the truth? Michael Carlin doesn't think so.
That I didn't do it and I'm an innocent man. And my nephew didn't do it either. He was at the hospital when they pulled up. My nephew was at the hospital when they pulled up. He didn't do it. They gave me a script to read in order to go home. My lawyer said, this is the only way you're going home. And when they came in that building that morning, I had been there an hour there rehearsing what to say, to go home. They said, they don't want you, they want Buff Daddy. So he gave me a script to read, and he gave me a code word to say to them when they came in. And I said the code word, letting them know that I was down with it. And they already were pre-planning this stuff because they had his murder book there, Tupac's murder book there.
Orlando wasn't even a shooter, He was actually a good kid, too, No, Orlando Anderson, here he is, the only Southside Crip standing in a casino. He was planetary.
Wow, the last time I saw him, he was laying in the bed, holding on to his last breath.
Yeah, John, we got a lot to cover up.
Sold cops throw shade and blame, fill the frame. Orlando's a throwaway patsy, denies the murder flatly. It's a cover-up. A chaos merchant's cover-up can't stop the truth from bubbling up. This shit's a cover-up.
Nobody cared about Pac having the right amount of security at all, period. No one cared. It was not mentioned at all. No one cared. No, and every time I ask Reggie, he gets really defensive. Told you in the hospital there, something wasn't right.
Interfering with the Vegas case. He's a lieutenant in Compton, LAPD, whatever. Interfering with the Vegas case.
They primarily use Jimmy Iovine and Ted Fields to oversee Interscope. And Interscope is who distributed Ruthless Records, and they also distributed Death Row Records and a few other independent black labels at the time that was pretty big.
This was assassination. It wasn't over no chain. It wasn't over no colors. This was assassination. And they can do one who assassinated Kennedy and everybody can talk about it. But when it comes to Tupac, nobody really wants the truth because the fact that the truth would have set me free.
Yeah, John, y'all got a lot to cover up. Y'all motherfuckers got Pac. Do y'all know how much that hurts our hearts?
Quail made you famous, your voice made you dangerous. Victim of jealousy, pour out your Hennessy. Death is calling me.
He had no business shooting at two cops. But that nigga was just loyal like that. That was just Tupac.
Stay away from Reggie Wright Jr. He is working with the feds.
And then that Reggie Wright Jr., he's threatening my son on the internet. The last few days, he didn't threaten him on the internet. You know, and it's wrong. It's wrong.
In seconds, Biggie Smalls was dead, shot like Tupac in the passenger seat. According to the police, no random event, but a well-executed hit by a still unknown assailant.
What's the hateful rage for? Oh, cause you killed Biggie? Well, if I did, wouldn't it make you supposed to love me even more if you love Tupac?
Or the fact that from day one, even though I got a bullet an inch into my skull, they always says I'm the one who had Tupac killed, which is far from the truth. Every person who participated in that, they never brung up.
Now remember, every dead celebrity the last 50 years that died of mysterious circumstances, the circumstances like assassinations, overdoses, and strange sex murders all have the same three-letter organization in the FBI file, the Jewish Defense League, all of them.
Because Pac, that weekend before he went, was talking about pulling away from the labels and starting their own.
Black, white, it don't matter. They all in there. They all have been extorted the same. The next thing is that in Tupac file, they was heavily at Tupac.
What me and Biggie want to do is take control of distribution of rap music. I said, oh boy, do you know what you're going up against?
They was offering him protection. They was trying to get him to sign to other deals. This is the Jewish Defense League.
Put it in a situation where it's a lot of people who participated and a lot of people who they don't talk about. And I'm not here to say they should get punished because I don't believe in that. I don't believe in the revenge. I believe that my kindness comes from God. My strength comes from God. So I'm not on that page of saying they need to get punished, but it's sort of sad that every person has all dropped everything on Keefy D.
Do you understand the organized criminal networks you're going up against and the two major ethnic groups that run it? He said, yeah, we do. I said, well, you and Biggie can't do no shit like this. He said, we're not alone. We are organizing other young rappers.
Prophet, he's the prophet now. He makes predictions of the future. None of this was played out right, but he makes this magical prediction of the future like, yeah, I don't care if, Big gotta die, if Pac gotta die, if Suge gotta go to jail. Why didn't he say Suge gotta die? Why did he say go to jail? Why does he say this before any of this even happens?
Flat out tell y'all why he faked it. The Jewish Defense League put a hit on Tupac Shakur.
And let's go and try to be a distributor on our own. At that time, it was 6 majors, and he was trying to be number 7. I remember he was talking about calling it Lucky 7.
Whew. Whew. You really trying to get the JDL knocking on my door.
Said if you control distribution, you can let them have their labels, you can give them anything else they want, but control distribution. From there, you control the industry.
And we don't want that, man. It's enough brothers out here dying already.
To get the witnesses to retract their beliefs or their statements, you give them money. It's how America works. Sometimes you get caught, sometimes you don't.
Ain't no doubt about it, because there's nobody else trying to kill him. It ain't no gangsters out of New York, and it ain't no gangbangers out of LA. The Jewish Defense League, in cahoots with Central Intelligence, FBI counterintelligence program, put a hit on Tupac.
You better hope I let you come home, nigga. Peace.
Anybody that ever put their hands on me, I'll tell you, might not get you that day, but you're going to get got.
Well, I think it's no justice from a man come from the inner cities in the courts. I think it's all revenge. So we never get justice.
No, but I'm an innocent man, and the Lord gonna set me free.
Okay. Yesterday, the defense accepted that sentencing, if they lose, will not be imposed by the jury. It will be imposed by the judge. Now, there was some conversation that happened between Keefedy and his attorney while they were weighing this. And in the end, he did agree to it, and that was entered into the record. So now this requires that any mandatory enhancements become consecutive sentences, which would mean Keefedy's gone for good, basically. Now, Suge Knight just told TMZ that he's not going to testify, but that Keefedy was bullshit. Now, TMZ interpreted that as saying Keefedy's recent interviews were bullshit and not that his originally illegally recorded proffered was bullshit, but Suge Knight did not clarify. Here's what we know. Greg Kading illegally recorded what he claimed was a federal proffer deal. He made millions and millions of dollars off his book, his documentary, Murder Rap, and his television series, Unsolved. Keefe did his book for the money and said that Greg Kading and his accomplices provided him with a script and a code word to put the confession on the record and save his family and 48 of his friends. Then Keefe claims he was paid $150,000 to do an interview to recite what he claims are the same lies. He also released a book that has an index just like a deposition. Ever heard of a hood book with an index? No, there's no hood books with indexes, only if they want to enter it into a record. It's sounding like a setup from the beginning. So Keefedy's life now hangs on the jury's instructions. If there are legally provided jury instructions, Keefedy walks. But if not, he gets convicted. It's really that simple. Keefedy was known as a drug dealer in Compton and not as a shot caller, and that's one of the gang enhancements. From his interviews, you can see he's not very high IQ. He says that he's never even read the book, and it was obvious when he was doing his interviews on the circuit that nobody was able to get him pinned down on something that was in the book that he actually knew. He obviously had no idea, no clue whatsoever what was really in his book. So who's really behind the murder? Well, The Rampart Scandal cops teamed up with the Compton police and a faction of death row security to organize a plan for the hit. It's sanctioned from others higher up the food chain. 3 gang members were used as the shooters. Tupac was hit 4 times and Suge was hit once, but both were expected to survive. Suge Knight checked himself out of the hospital, refusing sedation because he feared they would kill him in the hospital. Tupac survived for 6 days and took an unexpected turn after the arrival of a celebrity where all watchers left him alone. Tupac's estimated lifetime earnings were $1 billion, and at the time, Death Row Records was worth $500 million. Tupac and Suge were worth more dead than alive, and they were both targets that night. LAPD cops, including Sharitha Knight's boyfriend, Kevin Gaines, were on special assignment in Las Vegas from 2 days before the shooting until 2 days after Tupac died in the hospital. At the time of Tupac's death, a coroner vehicle was already idling inside the loading dock of the hospital, and Tupac's body was quickly wheeled into that vehicle where it was transported to the coroner's office, and a quick autopsy was performed just before the body was cremated, and that was less than 24 hours after his death. 6 months later, Biggie Smalls was gunned down by the same circle of people, and his lifetime earnings would have been an additional $1 billion. At that shooting, Officer Rafael Perez was on duty, caught destroying shell casings and contaminating the crime scene. He was covering up the murder. If the city of LA were found to be complicit in the murders, it would cost them $2 billion plus triple damages, an $8 billion problem for the city of Los Angeles. In 1998, a confession letter is written, and there's zero interest in it from LAPD or LVMPD, so the journalist Chris Blanchford files it away. Russell Poole uncovers its existence in 2013 and begins an investigation. I was part of that investigation. And that investigation is derailed by Greg Kading and the LAPD. And Greg admits that he's protecting his friends, Reggie Wright and Sharitha, who were named suspects in the confession letter and the Chris Blatchford statement. And the gang members that were also implicated in the murder were being protected by Greg Kading. Now, once again, the LAPD has their hands on derailing any sincere investigation into this murder. They had 8 billion reasons to derail the investigation. And then in 2015, an assistant district attorney expresses interest in the case, and Russell Poole and I were meeting secretly with this assistant district attorney, but he needed a sheriff's investigator. And Russell Poole goes to a meeting with the sheriffs, and I was disinvited to that meeting when we discovered that a sheriff had let the shooters into the club and had driven them to the airport the next day, trying to assassinate Suge Knight. Now, sheriff investigators were meeting with Russell to reopen both cases, and Russell Poole dies in the meeting with sheriff investigators at sheriff headquarters, where they have all kinds of medical equipment, defibrillators and whatnot. Probably one of the safest places to have a heart attack. I guess they didn't want this case reopened.
There you go. I think that's the end of the video. You can watch the whole video and a bunch more videos over at Michael Carlin's YouTube channel. Definitely check that out. This is Mike from the Young Jerks. If you're just checking me out for the first time on Michael Carlin's channel, we'll be streaming tomorrow the trial of Dwayne Davis in Vegas, hopefully tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Hopefully I'll see you there. We'll be following this throughout the next few weeks here, maybe months. This trial in Las Vegas. We'll see what happens. Again, I want to thank Michael Carlin for being here. I want to thank all of you for watching and supporting. Make sure you subscribe to all the channels, both the channels, The Young Jerks, JURKS, and Michael Carlin's YouTube channel, which we do have pinned in our Young Jerks chat. Again, thank you, Michael Carlin, for being here tonight. We'll see you soon. Have a great night, everyone. Have a great beginning of your week. Again, we'll be live tomorrow covering this trial at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Mike Crawford checking out. I'll talk to you soon, people. Thank you so much. Have a great night. Peace out. And again, thank you, Michael Carlin. And thank you, Russell Poole, too. Russell Poole. Rest in peace. See you soon, folks. Peace out.